So Hearthstone has like 500-600 different epics, more than legendaries, and I wanted to make a guide on which cards to keep and which to disenchant. I own all the cards and I will tell you from personal experience after playing pretty much all of them in the last 6 years, where a card can see play, if the card sees play at the moment in any good deck, even in a bad deck, if the card is represented at all, and if you should keep the card or disenchant it. Every single epic is 100 dust, and all the epics you don't use combined could be an entire deck. So for that, I will give you my insight. 2 disclaimers. Keep in mind, I'm some random guy. This is just my experience with the game and if I see the cards anywhere or not. On top of that, some of the cards are new in here or are part of the core set. If the card is new from Forged in the Barrens, it's kind of hard to tell if the card is really good or bad because it has been like, what, a couple weeks since the expansion got released? Time will tell if any of those cards really see play. So for any Forged of the Barrens cards, just know that maybe in the future they might be better, depending on when you watch this. For the core set cards, like let's say Brawl or Shield Slam cards that you can't disenchant, I will skip those. At least while I record this video, the cards are free and uncraftable anyway, so mentioning if you can disenchant that or not, that doesn't really help you. We go from Demon Hunter to Warrior and then through all the neutral epics. With the timestamps being up here, I assume this video is probably going to be like an hour plus. So let's look at cards, make good decisions and get some dust. Don't forget, if you like a certain card in here that I tell you to disenchant, just keep the card. It's just a game after all. Play the cards that are fun, not the cards that are good. And now let's start with Demon Hunter. Starting with the first card, Philosophy, which is already a double class card. This card doesn't really see play in Demon Hunter, especially because you don't really play demons, surprisingly. You just hit face. In Standard, might be different than Wild, but in Wild, this card doesn't see play. For Warlock, this might be a different story. You might want to copy Ticketus, might want to copy Doomguard. This is not too bad, but it's not necessary for any deck. You can play it in multiple different decks, but it's definitely not necessary to keep for anything. True and Crescent, Demon Hunter and Hunter. I saw this card in Egg Hunter or Death Rattle Hunter because when you summon a Death Rattle minion, you can trigger the Death Rattle after attacking into something. This card is not too bad. In Demon Hunter itself, this card, I'm pretty sure, does not see play at all. I've not encountered this card or seen it in any deck for Demon Hunter. For Hunter, maybe in something like an Egg Hunter. But that is also not necessarily a good deck. You can keep this for slow Death Rattle decks, but at the moment, for any fast or aggressive deck, this card doesn't see play. Then Sigil of Flame. Surprisingly good card. There's one achievement to trigger 200 sigils. For that, I guess keep the card and trigger 200 times. That's really annoying. I noticed that people don't know how to play around that. In Demon Hunter though, unless you play Reno Demon Hunter, which doesn't sound like a good deck, or Control Demon Hunter, which is also not a good deck, then this card is just bad. Every time you play Demon Hunter, you either play Il'gynoth OTK to just win the game with a single OTK, or you play Hyper Aggressive. If you play Hyper Aggressive, you don't want to blow up your own deck, and if you play Il'gynoth OTK, I think you just want to focus on drawing cards. However, think about this card kind of like Doomsayer that the opponent can't counter. And personally, I would still keep this card, considering that Demon Hunter, with the Death Rattle stuff they get introduced in Fortune in the Barrens, might be a control-heavy deck in the future, but with the hero power itself, it wants you to hit into something and this one destroys the stuff you have in your board. I would rather play Doomsayer than this card. Philsteel Executioner. I think people play this in Odd Demon Hunter, and I think in Standard too. For Odd Demon Hunter, you don't really have a way of corrupting this because you don't play 5-cost cards. I really think you play 29 cards that cost 3 mana or less. So this card wouldn't see play in Odd Demon Hunter. In Demon Hunter itself, where you just point face, I think it's okay for Standard, but it's also not needed for anything. You can just play a weapon instead of this. If you want to play this card as a weapon, have it corrupted over here, you need to play a card that costs more than 3 mana. And if you play, let's say, a card on turn 4 that corrupts this, and then on turn 5 you equip this into a 2-drop, it might be alright. But in Wild it doesn't see play, in Standard it's alright. Not necessary for anything, you can just hit face in better ways. Stealth Stepper. This card is not fun to play against. People play this in Odd Demon Hunter, or actually any aggressive Demon Hunter deck. Getting +4 attack and drawing a card, that's really good. It's Eviscerate on a minion that also draws you something. Really good card, keep that and play it in aggressive decks. Vengeful Spirit. I've been trying to make this card work in Control Demon Hunter, and if you play something like N'Zoth or you play the 7-mana legendary, this is not too bad. Problem is that playing an aggressive Demon Hunter deck is so much better than playing Control. So I would say for now, because the card is still new and we don't know what the upcoming expansions are going to bring for Demon Hunter, keep this, but only if you ever want to play Control/Death Rattle Demon Hunter. Besides that specific deck, this is pretty bad. But hey, it's 4 mana 4/4 that draws 2, so that's pretty good. I would keep it, but I'm not too sure about a slow Demon Hunter deck. Expendable Performers. So this card fills your board with stuff, and after everything dies, you summon more stuff. This is not too bad. Only problem is this doesn't fit into any deck. You either hit face, have an OTK, or try a control deck, which doesn't really work. You can disenchant this, guaranteed. Ancient Void Hunt. If there's ever going to be a big demon hunter list where you just summon big demons, this card would belong in there. Problem is though, it has been like, what, 8 months since Golemans got released? That deck doesn't exist. So for that I would disenchant the card, but if there's ever going to be a control demon hunter deck where you probably also play this thingy, then you want to keep those two cards, Pit Command as well as Ancient Void Hunt. That is kind of like gambling though, it's thinking. Is there going to be a control demon hunter deck in the future that you want to play? I doubt it. I kind of doubt it, so I would disenchant both cards and get the dust. But if there's ever going to be something like that, those cards will see play in there. In Druid, we start with Embiggen. If you play Token Druid or any aggressive Druid deck, which is just Token Druid, then you play this card. The reason is, if you play Embiggen into a Pirate, then you summon Patches from your deck. Patches is going to be a 3/3 or even a 5/5 if you have 2 of those. Also, when you play Token Druid and you have something like Voracious Reader, that's all the card draw you have in that entire deck. So just drawing good minions, or like big minions now, because they have +2/+2, makes the deck a lot better. Keep that for Token Druid. Besides that, I think it doesn't see play. You could play something like an Auctioneer and then just draw a card because this one is 0 mana. But you have so many other 0 mana spells, you wouldn't play this. So Token Druid, keep it. For any other deck, doesn't see play. Forbidden Ancient, completely useless. When this card came out, it was alright, but that was 5 years ago. Right now, this card is just stats. And you can play so many better things than just stats. If you still happen to have this card, you can safely disenchant that. Doesn't see play anywhere. Secure the deck. If you want to play Gonk OTK, Gonk the Raptor, the 4/9 from Rastakhan's Rumble, Secure the deck is pretty good, because you get a bunch of claws that then, help with Gonk and the OTK. Besides that, this card also doesn't see play. If you like Gonk, keep it. Crystal Merchant. Technically, when you play Quest Druid, the quest from Muldoon, then you want to have mana crystals available at the end of your turn. This card would also help you and draw a card. It's basically a mana-tied totem for Shaman, without the part where it can't attack and is a 0/3 for 3 mana. That is better than mana-tied. However, in Wild, and I think this card is Wild, pretty sure, the card never saw play. You can try to make it work, but they're just a lot better cards that you can play instead of this. Also because it's an epic, you'd rather have 100 dust than this card. But if you want to play Quest Druid, the one from Muldoon, the quest, you can keep this. Besides the deck, disenchant that. Crystal Song. While spell-only Mage works, you have something like Apex Blast and some other stuff, spell-only Druid doesn't work. This is bad. Also, it's random. The problem with random and wild is there are a lot of random bad cards, as you can see on this page alone. Like what is this, There's a bunch of random that is bad. This card is random and bad. I mean, it's less random because of Discover, but this card doesn't see play. You can disenchant that. Guess the Weight. You can kind of play this in actually any deck for Druid, because you draw 2 cards for 2 mana if you know your deck. Little bit of gambling, but it's card draw for Druid. Problem is, when you play any of the decks that actually see play in Wild, for example, you have Celestial, you have Malygos OTK, you get Token Druid, stuff like that, this wouldn't see play. However, in slower Druid decks, let's say Hadronox on Azoth, which are also pretty bad, this card can see play for sure. In the best case, you draw 2 cards for 2 mana. That is not necessarily that good, considering that you can just go to 10 mana crystals and play Ultimate Infestation and draw 5, which might be a bit better. So if you play slow deck, this never hurts to include, but there are better alternatives. Mulch. Back when people wanted to play Druid and didn't use Naturalize to destroy a single minion, they used Mulch instead. Thing is though, that was like 3-4 years ago, and since then people don't play this card anymore. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't play this card in any deck. This is dust. Pilfered. So while this one gives you mana crystals, so like Wild Growth and Overgrowth, it's 3 mana and you have to have minions. If you don't have minions, this doesn't do anything. I've not seen anybody really play this card in a deck since actually ever, so you can also disenchant this. Astral, that is a meme deck. You could, for example, coin into Lightning Bloom and then you have 4 mana, play this card and you're at 10. Thing is though, at the moment, because of Celestial Alignment, which is a lot better, you would probably rather play Celestial Alignment and actually win. Problem with that card is, after you play it, you have nothing in your hand is empty. And you would need to top deck something that draws your cards. With Celestial Alignment, you keep all the cards in your hand, which is a lot better. So this is like the very bad version of Celestial, and you can play it in a really bad meme deck. It's not good. Play it only if you want to have fun. Tiger. This card technically goes infinite, right? Every single time it dies, you shuffle it back into your deck, and that's cool and all, but having an infinite 3/5 doesn't do anything. So this card is also dust. There was a fun deck back in the day where you played Heteronox as well as Astro Tiger and you just never fatigued. But a matchup like that, I think, doesn't happen. All the top meta decks have a way to win. They're kind of like OTKs, or they're so good in the first 5 turns you just die. This doesn't do anything. You can disenchant it too. Branching Paths. One of the best cards ever, for Druid at least. The thing is, even though it's just 4 mana draw 2, which sounds pretty bad, or 4 mana gain 12 armor, which also sounds kinda bad, the fact that this one is versatile makes it really good. It's really, really good. For example, if you played Spreading Plague and you have like 3 minutes on your board, you could buff it twice with +2 attack. You could draw cards when you need. You can get armor against aggressive decks. This card is versatile, which makes it good in every matchup. Whether you face control, something else, aggressive, you know, you can pick. And that's the upside of that. Which is why this card sees play in, I think, every single slow Druid deck. Malygos, people actually only play Malygos and win. And for that, that's pretty good. Talking about Malygos as well as Aviana Kun, Sightmelon sees play in those decks. Aviana and Kun both being 10 mana, Malygos and Sathrovar being 9 mana, Geppetto 8 mana. You can draw those cards from your deck. You can target those cards. So if you like the idea of OTKs or big minions, use Sightmelon, draw 3 cards. It is fairly consistent. And I think you run 2 versions of this. You run 2 copies just to draw the card once, because then you draw more cards. You know what I mean. So if you play OTKs, keep the Sightmelon. Besides OTKs, build your own big Druid meme deck, and then you draw 4 cards, but that sounds bad. Play it with Aviana and Kun. Whispering. Technically, if you want to play a spell-heavy token Druid, where you would play this one as well as this card over here, the Glowfly Swarm, as well as the Rune Totems, whatever it's called, you could keep this card. Thing is though, when people play token Druid in Wild, they always summon minions. They play patches. I mean, they summon patches. They play Embiggen, play the Pirates, play some other stuff. And you wouldn't really play this card because your hand is most likely empty on turn 4. But if you like the idea of summoning your entire board full of stuff with spells instead of minions, Whispering Woods makes sense. This card is not bad, it's just that at the moment, nobody plays that. Alright card, if you like spell token Druid or that sounds interesting to you, keep it, but besides that, doesn't see play. Anubiseth. This is pretty much like Arcane Anomaly, which is 5 mana over here in neutral. Real quick. Those are the exact same cards, kind of, because it doesn't matter that this card is in your hand and then you cast a spell that costs 5 mana or more. You cast Ultimate Infestation, draw into those cards, and then they are free. Thing about that is, it's a little bit unreliable, because sometimes this card is just in your hand forever and you never play it, and other times you just burn it because your hand is full, and other times when you cast Ultimate Infestation, you just draw all 4 and summon your entire board full of stuff for free. Technically, it's not a bad card to include into your deck, but because decks are fairly refined and you just play the cards that help you win, this doesn't really help you win. It summons 3/5 and taunt. It is free though, which is nice, and if you want to play any Druid deck ever that has Ultimate Infestation, this makes sense, but at the moment it just doesn't see play. It doesn't hurt to keep, but it also doesn't hurt to disenchant it. Crystal Stack. Heal Druid, which is such a niche deck, is better than Freeze Shaman, but equally bad. This and Lucent Bark kind of goes together in the same deck, but it just doesn't see play. It could be a 5 mana 8/8 rush, which is not too bad to have, and you only have to restore 5 health this game, which is also not that hard. Problem is that nobody plays Heal Druid, and it's a really bad archetype. But if you like the idea of that, keep the card. Fate Spinner. This is 1 out of 3 cards that have the word secretly on the effect, and it's pretty cool. Deal 3 damage or buff the entire board. It's kind of like mind games with the opponent, because the opponent has to think, is he going to blow up the board or buff everything? Problem is that this card is really bad. It doesn't see play and hasn't seen play since it got released, so you can disenchant that, but it's a really cool effect. It's mind games in a card. Gloomstack. This card was in the Hall of Fame after Baku and Gen became part of the Hall of Fame, and it hasn't seen play since. If you want to play Odd Druid, play this, but Odd Druid is terrible, so you rather not want to play this. Glowfly. Exactly as I mentioned with Whispering Woods, actually the same thing is also true for Living Mana. If you just want to summon token stuff, but with spells, play that in a deck, but at least in Wild, this one doesn't see play. I think in Standard this is still fine, and you can use this in Savage Draw and then win the game, but in Wild this doesn't see play. Living Mana used to see play in Token Druid, doesn't see play there anymore for the past like year or 2, since you have Voracious Reader and just better minions than that. However, if you want to play, as mentioned, the token version, which only has spells, then use that instead. Lunar Visions has always been garbage. If you draw 2 cards and they're not minions, you spend 5 mana to draw 2. It's really bad. And if you happen to draw minions, then what does this one do? Unless you draw 2 2-cost cards that you can then summon immediately, this is just bad. Don't play this, disenchant that. Tree Speaker. If you like the idea of Treant Druid, so all those tree thingies, the ones you summon in here, keep this guy. He makes them 5/5s. Don't forget, if you're about to play this card ever, you transform your minions, meaning if you can attack with the minions first, but you transform them first, you can't attack that turn. You gotta attack first and transform. Just because I misplayed with that. It's not that bad if you play Treant Druid, it's just that Treants are not good. They're just, no, they're not good. You have a legendary for that, the 5/10, Goro the Might Tree. You have this one twin spell for 8 mana that summons 5 Treants. Problem is that it's just not good. If you like the idea of that deck though, you can play it, but it's not a good deck. Dark Whispers. I think this is one of the only choose one cards that never saw play because it's so bad. Pretty artwork, but it's really bad. You don't want to spend 6 mana to give something a 5/5, and you don't want to summon 5 Wisps. Even if you were to play the quest, so you have both effects combined, you wouldn't play this. Disenchant that. Runic Carvings. This sees play in the same version as here, Glowfly Swarm. Just summon stuff from your hand. I'm pretty sure, at least in Wild, this card doesn't see play outside of like Spell Token Druid, which is a niche deck. In Standard, this might be a different story. I would keep this card because it's also used in Shaman, and it's not bad. It's just not really used at the moment. Stampeding Roar. This card only ever saw play when you summon Giant Anaconda, which is this minion over here, which then pulled Mechathun. So you could spend 6 mana, get the 7-drop, and then get Mechathun. That was like 3 years ago and has never been done since. This card is pretty bad. Even if you were to play Beast Druid, I think you might run this card, but then you would need to play Beast Druid, which is bad. Just don't play this. You can disenchant this. Ancient of Law. Even though it draws 2 cards now, because it got unnerved like a couple months ago, this card is terrible. You can disenchant it for sure. Celestial. Fantastic card. You can just lock out your opponent, you can summon giant stuff, you can play this, and then gain like 8 mana back, and the next time you just win. You have Malygos, you have other cards. This card is fantastic. Really great card. Makes an archetype by itself. Fantastic thing. Keep it for sure. Dream Petal. When you played set OTK decks, so where that's Malygos, where that's Mechathun, you could play this, but you can also really just draw Aviana, Kuhn, and win the game, which is a little bit easier than trying to rely on Dream Petal, which then doesn't die to, let's say, explosive runes when you summon this. Yeah, it used to see play in OTK decks, but that was like 2-3 years ago. Right now you can just play Aviana Kuhn. It's better. A Druid of the Plains. New card from Fortune the Barrens. Pretty sure I've not seen this card in Wild yet. It's not that bad to keep because you could deal like 7 damage, maybe into a 5/5, and then you get a 6/7 taunt. That's pretty good. And you can also use this as well as this card over here, Guardian Animals. So for that, I would keep it. I would keep it for sure. At least now. Maybe in a month from now, it's different and you see that this card doesn't see play. But for like Beast Druid with like big stuff, this doesn't hurt to have. Giant Anaconda. As mentioned, this only saw play when you summon Mechathun. Besides that, this card is pretty bad. Disenchant that. Marsh Hydra. If you want to play set big deck, we have like this one, which then summons stuff like Twilight Runner, then keep the card, because then you have like Twilight Runner, you draw a bunch of cards, and then summon Marsh Hydra from your hand. Problem is though that Guardian Animals doesn't summon the Hydra or the Druid. So it's more like you don't die, and then you play that. I don't know, it's hard to say. It's just you get something random to your hand, even though it's like less random because it's 8 instead of just random. It just doesn't see play. If you like the idea of big Beast Druid, keep it, but that deck doesn't exist really, so you can disenchant that. Voice of the Old Gods. When you play the quest that combines both choose one effects, you can play this card, and then you have like an entire board full of 3/3s, which is not that bad, or you buff your existing stuff. Thing is though, that doesn't see play true, so yeah. Your decision on that. This is actually a fine card. You can play something like Spiteful, where you reveal a spell in your deck, and then you summon a minion based on the cost of the spell. So that's pretty good. You can also play Primordial, the new 8/8 or 8 mana, whatever. The one that is kind of green, that reveals a spell in your deck and does the same thing. Draws it and then summons a random minion of the same cost. You can play it in that style of deck if you want to play Spiteful Druid. You also play like those two in there, just to mention it right quick. This card by itself doesn't see play though, so if you like Spiteful or Primordial, it's alright. Not that good by itself though. Guardian Animals. You summon Twilight Runners, which then draw you 2 cards each. That's really good. Keep this. Also summons Teacher's Pet, summons a bunch of good stuff. For Druid, this is not bad to have, if you like Beast Druid. But since this card got nerfed from 7 mana to 8, I really haven't seen that, so you don't need to keep that, unless you really like beasts. Tree of Life. One of the most beautiful animations in the entire game. Problem is, this is pretty bad. You don't want to restore all characters to full health. you would rather just play Reno, and Reno Druid is also really bad. This only makes sense to keep if you want to go for the achievement where you use Cthulhu, the new one that deals 30 damage, and kill your opponent from full health. Because you would play Tree of Life, heal them back to 30, and then play Cthulhu and deal exactly 30 damage to get one achievement. Besides that achievement though, never saw play. Survival of the Fittest. This is great in Spiteful, it's great in Primordial, it's great in even Clown Druid, where you just summon the Clown. Imagine this one into the Clown, the 9-mana 4/4 that summons copies of itself, which you can then corrupt by playing that. That's really good. Survival of the Fittest is a great card. It's a great card. Keep it. Ultimate Infestation has been 3.5 years and it's still one of the best cards. It's just too much value. I'm still surprised this card never got nerfed, but in any slow deck ever, this card sees play. It's fantastic. Keep it for sure. And we go to Hunter. Bestial Wrath. This card saw play in exactly one OTK, I think, and that was on Knuckles OTK. The 3/7 monkey from Gadgetsan that has, brass knuckles, which is why it's called Knuckles, yeah. So you could play this on Knuckles and then give it Rush, but you can also play other cards on Knuckles. So besides that one specific OTK, I think this card never saw play. It's an alright card, it doesn't see play. Especially not in Wild. You can disenchant this. Lock and Load. This one is the uncraftable version, but it's also a card in TGT, the Grand Tournament. If you like memes, you can play it, but if not, then you can also disenchant that. It's too random. Getting random beast or random hunter cards is really bad. Stampede. Yeah, same thing with that. Getting random beast is really, really bad. You would think, oh, so it's like a self-sustaining card. I can play this into a bunch of beasts and get more beasts to my hand. Random beasts are terrible. Like terrible. Disenchant this. Never saw play. A Beast Within. When this card got released, you played this on Knuckles instead of Bestial Wrath. Thing is though, this card is also pretty bad. So if you want to play Knuckles, play it because you can attack with Knuckles after it has Rush, and then buff it again and again. Besides Knuckles OTK, doesn't see play. Toxic Reinforcement. You like Face Hunter, you want to just make your opponent unhappy because you ignore everything they do and hit face. Also, you want to play Odd Hunter. Toxic Reinforcement is great. Keep in mind that the Leper Gnomes are now 2/1s instead of 1/1s, meaning this card is better than it was before. The only problem is you need to enjoy playing Face Hunter, which is you do absolutely nothing but targeting face. You ignore everything your opponent does and just point face. It doesn't feel like you play against another human being. It feels like you play against an NPC. So if you like that, keep it. Card is really good for that. Any other deck doesn't see play. True Aim. As mentioned in Demon Hunter, if you want to play Egg Hunter or Death Rattle Hunter, this is not too bad to have. Whenever you summon a Death Rattle minion, you can immediately attack into something and the Death Rattle triggers because the minion also punches the same target. Only problem is, if you play Egg Hunter and you have 0 to Eggs, I think those minions can't attack because they have 0 attack, and that doesn't really work together. So we need to buff them or summon something that has like a, 1/5 in stats or whatever, that can then attack. True Aim is not that bad. You should keep the card, I think. Dinomancy has always been terrible. The funny thing is, Shadow Form for Priest, which makes a hero power deal 2 damage, was always okay because when you draw the second copy, it makes a hero power even better. Instead of dealing 2 damage, you deal 3. Dinomancy was always like that, which even if you draw the second version of Dinomancy, it has the same effect. And now Shadow Form is the same thing. Even if you draw the second copy, it doesn't do anything. Dinomancy itself, gotta say, no, has always been terrible. One of the worst spells ever. It's not good. It's really not good. Don't Feed the Animals. Corrupt. Give all beasts in your hand +2/+2. This is honestly not too bad. I was surprised by that too. It's not that bad if you play... I don't think it was even Hunter, it was just Beast Hunter. But if you play a Beast Hunter and you want to buff your stuff, that's alright. Hand buff is surprisingly better than I thought. Same for hand buff Paladin as well as Warrior. So hand buff Hunter also kind of works. Only problem is you need to play a bunch of beasts to make this card work. I think you should keep this card still, because it's fairly new. I mean, it's 5 months old, but still. I think you should keep this card and play Beast Hunter, because that's a solid deck. But in Wild, you wouldn't play this. For Standard, yes. For Wild, no. Feign Death. If you play Death Rattle Hunter, you play 9 lives, you play Feign Death, and you play Play Dead, a 1, 2, and 3 cost spell that triggers Death Rattles. If you like that, play it. You were also to play something like a Tonk, something like Katrina. Katrina summons a random beast from your deck, and you play Big Beast. That's pretty good. So if you play Death Rattle Hunter, keep it. If you play Egg Hunter, which is like the same thing but with smaller minions, keep it. Besides that, doesn't see play. Goblin Prank could technically see play on the just mentioned Egg Hunter because your eggs are 0/2s and then you buff them. Thing is, this only really sees play in Knuckles Hunter, the same OTK as mentioned on the first page, where you had like this card and this card. So if you like Knuckles and OTK, keep it. Besides that, never saw play. Kolka. If you play this card in Standard, actually not that bad. You summon a bunch of 1/1s with Rush. There's also an achievement to summon 6 of those hyenas in a single turn. For Standard, this is fine. I think in something like a Secret or Reno Hunter, this might see play, but I think in Wild, really, decks are so reformed, so refined, you wouldn't really play this. So for Standard, keep it. For Wild, no. Rat Trap. If you play Secret Hunter or Even Hunter, it's never bad to keep a single copy of Rat Trap. You wouldn't play 2, but you play 1 because the opponent doesn't expect it. And playing 3 cards is pretty easy. So this is pretty much a 2-mana 6/6. And if you have Face Stalk and you get this card for free from your deck, it's not bad to have. Keep 1 copy, not 2. Steam Weedle Sniper. You could play this card in Even Hunter. Outside of exactly Even Hunter, this wouldn't see play because you have Dwarven Sharpshooter, the 1/3, which is just better than spending 2 mana on the same effect. Even Hunter, yes. Outside of that, no. Toxic Arrow. This card only ever saw play when you played it on Unstable Ghoul, the one that has Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to everything. In the Naga Sea Witch meta, which was like 2 years ago, you played Naga Sea Witch for 5 mana and then summoned your entire board full of giants. To counter that, you played Unstable Ghoul and Toxic Arrow, because when the ghoul dies, everything dies on the board. Besides that one specific interaction and meta, this never saw play, so you can disenchant that. Augmented. When you play Egg Hunter, Death Rattle Hunter, this is not too bad to have. You can buff it, it deals more damage, you can play OTKs with that. For those style of Hunter decks, keep the card. Besides that, doesn't see play. Master's Call. 100% keep this card, because if you ever want to play a certain combo, or just beasts, you draw 3 cards of 3 mana. Or you discover something specific if you play something like Reno Hunter, which is not that bad. For that, keep the card. 9 Lives. Fantastic card for Death Rattle Hunter. Whether you have Axe, you have Sylvanas, you have a Tonk, this card is fantastic. For those slow Hunter decks, keep the card guaranteed. For any aggressive deck, pretty sure this wouldn't see play. Unless you have like aggressive Death Rattles, which might be something like Leper Gnome, but then they steal 2 damage, so yeah, play it for slow decks. Rat Pack. Alright card in Battlegrounds, but it hasn't seen play in... Yeah, this card doesn't see play. Disenchant that. Stable Master. Most people are surprised that this card exists in the game, because they never see this. You can disenchant this. Stormhammer. Surprisingly, Dragon Hunter is not bad. You can curve out really well. You have a bunch of effects that have a bonus effect, bunch of cards that have a bonus effect when you have a dragon in your hand. You have Varanus, you have the 6/5 that destroys something random. Stormhammer is great. This card is basically infinite. Keep it for Dragon Hunter. Alright deck and Wild. Not perfect though, but it's an alright deck. You can definitely play that to like Diamond 5 for Legend. Arcane Fletcher. Never saw play ever. You can disenchant that. That's just how it is. This card is terrible. Disenchant the card. Cruelusk. If you play Even Hunter and you happen to have spouts, this is not too bad. I think outside of Even Hunter though, you wouldn't play this. And even in Even Hunter, this card doesn't really see play. So I think it's just an alright card to have, because I mean it destroys something if you trigger a spell, if you trigger the spellburst effect after you cast a spell, but it doesn't see play really. Maybe for Even Hunter, but not really. Necromechanic. This is the better version of Baron Rivendare, the 1/7 that is neutral for Egg Hunter or like a slow Hunter deck. As you can tell, the only archetype I seem to know is Egg Hunter and Death Rattle Hunter. For that, keep the card. Besides those 2 decks, obviously wouldn't really make sense to have it. Torxmonger. Whenever you play a 1-cost minion, didn't we just have that? Yeah, right here. It's terrible. It is not good. It is really bad. Really, really bad. You could play this into like a Rush minion, but you would need to play Torxmonger. Just no. Warsong Wrangler. Been playing the card a little bit so I can discover certain beasts in my deck. For example, the 1/3 Raptor that has Frenzy, shuffle itself into your deck and then get a buff. This is not too bad to have. And I assume in something like a Reno deck or in a combo deck, this is pretty good. Imagine you have something like Charged Devil Saw or King Crush in your deck for an OTK, and you just play this, draw the card, because you get it, and you also buff it. It would be good for those style of combo decks. But besides that, so far it doesn't see play in Wild. Standard might be different, but for Wild, no. Piranha Launcher. This was my first golden epic I got from one of those ranked chests at the end of a month. Yeah, never saw play, card is terrible. Scarlet. If you like OTKs, like the mentioned King Crush or Charged Devil Saw OTK, this card is great. Your King Crush would be something like 4 mana. That's really good. 4 mana King Crush is great. This can also reduce the second version of itself, which is even better. And because those are beasts, you can draw all of those with Master's Call. So if you like that style of deck, keep it. If not, then dust. To my side. Spell Hunter, sadly, is really bad. It's really bad. Spell only Mage is fine, but Spell only Hunter, nah. The problem is you will need to play a bunch of secrets, also have the Spellstone in your hand, and then hope you get the right minions from to my side. Oh, that's kinda... In this day and age, in 2021, this doesn't work, sadly. But Spell Hunter is a fun deck. If you like fun, play it. But if you want to win, probably not. White Blood Stinger. In something like a Reno Hunter or in a Big Beast Hunter, which doesn't exist, you would play this card. This is basically Dirty Red, but it also attacks a minion. And if you happen to play Tavish, the new legendary, the 2/5, that summons a beast from your deck after you have a beast that attacks, this works together. So for 9 mana, you could then summon a Tundra Rhino into another minion, into another one. But that's just the combo that you might want to try out. Probably doesn't work or happen ever, but yeah. This is a good version of Dirty Red, or better version of that. For 6 mana. If you play Reno Hunter, keep it. Besides that, doesn't see play. Abominable Bowman. Technically, summons a beast that died this game. Outside of some really weird OTKs, it doesn't see play. Also, just noticed he has 3 arms. You can disenchant this card for sure. Crushing Walls. Maybe if you play Spell Hunter, which is not good, you could play this. Because if you play Zul'jin, the 10 mana guy, then you know, cast a spell again, which is pretty good. But outside of like Zul'jin, this wouldn't really exist. Even if you play stuff like Spiteful Hunter, you wouldn't play this card either. You would play Call of the Wild and this one. Crushing Walls is kind of slow. Play it if you like Zul'jin and Big or Spell Hunter, but it doesn't really see play. Gladiators. You can safely disenchant that. This just doesn't see play for the past 7 years. Disenchant that. Call of the Wild. Even Hunter. Really good. Spiteful Hunter. Really good. Any Hunter deck that goes up until turn 8. Really good. One of the, I feel like, most fair cards that are also good, if that makes sense. Like, you don't feel like this is broken, and you also don't feel like, oh, this is terrible. You feel like this is perfectly balanced to put into a deck, and it's a good card. Keep Call of the Wild. I just like the artwork. It's pretty. A Giant Sandworm. Hasn't seen play since it got released. Disenchant that. Even though it's kind of cool, right? It's an 8/8 that you can attack again, but no. Doesn't see play. Guardian Animals. As far as I'm concerned, this doesn't see play in Hunter, but it sees play in Druid to summon the Twilight Runner, the one that draws 2 cards. So for Druid, keep it. For Hunter, probably not, because for 5 mana you don't get the best cards. But you could get something like Tundra Rhino, and then everything is charged. Jewel, if you like, Death Rattle Hunter. Not the slow stuff or the small stuff with like Axe and more Axe and more Axe. No. Play this for Tonk. Play this for Savannas. Play it for big Death Rattle minions. Also, if you happen to play Zul'jin, recast that. That's pretty good. I would play this card for sure in Death Rattle Hunter. And lastly, Nagrand Slam. If you've been playing Standard and you saw a deck of Lunacy and Mage, this card was 7 mana and really good. You wouldn't really play this for 10 mana, even though Zul'jin resummons all of that and, you know, cast a spell again. If you play Spiteful Hunter though, this would summon a 10-drop. If you play Spiteful and Primordial combined, it's not too bad. For that style of deck, keep it. You could also just put it into Even Hunter with Call of the Wild and it wouldn't be bad. But in any real deck, like deck that works and gets you to Legend, I think this doesn't see play. It's more like for a fun deck that you can play every now and then, but it's not that consistent to win games over and over. Nagrand Slam, maybe for Even, maybe for a deck with Zul'jin, but besides that, no. For Mage, pretty fast. For the first card, Forbidden Flame never saw play. You can disenchant that guaranteed. Way better cards. Arcane Blast. Technically, if you play a spell damage focused deck, this is not too bad. But you also wouldn't play this. This saw play a couple years ago, but it doesn't anymore. You can just play a lot of better cards for any deck you would like to play. Not necessary. Devolving. This is actually not too bad to keep. Sometimes your opponent summons a giant minion, or they have a top minion or something annoying. You can devolve that. This is basically Polymorph, but for 1 mana. I would keep this. Never hurts to include into a deck. Probably sees play in Reno Mage. Apexes. If you like a Reno Secret Mage, I think it sees play in there. If you just play Secret Mage normally, you wouldn't play Apexes. So I think it's only in Reno Secret Mage for that. Alright card, you get something random. Book of Spectres, draw 3 cards, discard any spells drawn. When you play Pocket Galaxy Mage, so the 7 mana legendary spell that changes the cost of all minions in your deck to 1 mana. You play this card to draw 3 cards that cost 0 mana. I meant 0, not 1, sorry. So Book of Spectres for that deck is good. Besides that, I think it doesn't see play. Technically, you could play this in an OTK deck, but then you would burn all the spells you need for your OTK, so. In Pocket Galaxy, good card. Icicle. Doesn't see play, disenchant that. Mana Cyclone. When you want to finish your quest, open the way gates. This card is fantastic, it helps you for that. Besides that one quest deck though, I think it doesn't see play. You could play it in Flamebreaker, but at the moment you just play the version that has like Mozaki or Flamebreaker, and it's just, you win on turn 5. So you don't need Mana Cyclone. But it doesn't hurt to keep the card. Gives you a bunch of random, and a bunch of random is pretty good. So I think for those 2 decks, Quest Mage as well as like Flamebreaker OTK, this card doesn't hurt to have. Good one. Primordial. You can still keep this card and play it in like Reno Mage or like OTK Mage, whatever Mage actually. The only problem is that discovering random spells in Wild, random stuff in general in Wild, is worse than random stuff in Standard. Like, Standard has the last 3-4 expansions, which are all good cards, and Wild has a bunch of bad cards, so I would still keep it, but I can give you a bunch of garbage that you will never use. Wildfire. I'm a big fan of Even Mage as well as Hero Power Mage. For that 2 decks, keep it. I think it doesn't see play in a competitive deck though, but because that's like the first thing they introduced for Mage this year, and we have 2 more expansions in this year, this is pretty good. I think this one is going to be a good card later down the line. I like Wildfire a lot. Keep the card. Arcane. Technically good, but yeah, I don't know. This doesn't see play in Wild. Maybe in Standard. If you play something like the Mana Cyclone or Evocation, that's good, because you reduce the cost of everything. And it's like an ongoing effect, not like an end of turn effect or start of turn effect. It happens when you play it. For that it's good, but I haven't seen this yet. So it's hard to evaluate this. I would wait or play it in like an Evocation deck. It's alright. Combustion. It's just a good removal spell. If you like removal spells for any deck ever, that's a good one. Ice Block. The best secret ever made. You don't die. Twice. Keep it. Manic Soulcaster. This is your Reno Mage version of Baleful Banker, where you can shuffle a minion into your deck. If you want to play slow Reno Mage deck, you can play this, but I think even in those decks it doesn't see play, because you don't want to shuffle stuff into your deck. That just doesn't happen. But it wouldn't really hurt to keep it for that. For Reno Mage, it's fine. Rigged Fair Game. Yeah, that's not fair. That is not a fair card. It draws 3 cards for 0 mana, because you have something like Mad Scientist or anything else that changes the cost of secrets to 0. You just get them for free. This is 0 mana, draw 3. Keep the card for sure. Simulacrum. This sees play in OTK Mage, where you play like Antonidas as well as the girls. You could copy Sorcerer's Apprentice, and then you have multiple Sorcerers. Also in some other, I guess, OTKs, but it's hard to tell. If you play an OTK, you just play Mozaki right now, or Flamewaker instead of Antonidas, but if you like Antonidas and the girls, play that. Spellbender. I think you never play 2 Spellbenders on one deck, so keep one of them, if at all. This is not too bad to have in Secret Mage, because the opponent never expects this to happen. And if they buff their own stuff on the board, for example, hand buff Paladin is pretty popular right now, and they play stuff like Hand of Adal to buff things on their own board, you would buff the enemy. You get the buff from your opponent. That's not too bad to have. Keep one copy, but 2 never see play, I think. Splitting Image. Doesn't see play in Wild, Disenchant that. Unexpected. Same thing. This is only ever seen when you get it randomly to your hand, but you don't include this in your deck. Disenchant that too. Arcane. For Reno Mage or Slow Mage deck, maybe Big Spell Mage, that's a good card. The thing about secrets is sometimes they are garbage, sometimes they are really good when they're called Ice Block. And this could be anything. I think Mage has like 17, 18 different secrets. Your opponent doesn't know what it is, so they 100% misplay when they try to test for the secret. Arcane Keysmith is a great card for slow decks. This only ever saw play in Molten Giant Mage. It was called Echo Giants Mage, where you went into like 10 health, then you summoned Molten Giants, used Echo of Medivh, summoned more Molten Giants, and then used something like Frost Nova to freeze the enemy and then win next turn. That was 2014. Hasn't seen play since. Gold. You like Secret Mage, you like Arena Secret Mage, 100% keep this card. It's great for that. Besides those 2 decks, obviously, doesn't see play. Potion. You would like to play OTKs, you like to trigger death rolls again on minions that now cost only 1 mana. That's really good. For any combo deck ever, this is pretty cool. You also used to play this as well as Totem Pilgrim, the 8 mana guy that discovers a spell in your deck to go infinite. Still a good card. I'm not sure if it really sees play a lot, but in a Reno deck, for example, this wouldn't hurt to have. Never saw play Disenchant that. Apexes. If you like to play spell-only Mage, which is bad in Wild but good in Standard, keep this card for sure. It's bad in Wild because if you get random spells and random stuff, there's some really bad random stuff. The Last Wave. Never saw play. Disenchant that. Cabalist Tome. Look at the golden one. For 5 mana, you get 3 cards. That's absolutely terrible. That's horrendous. Disenchant that. Deck of Wonders. You like to play for memes, for something random. You play for fun against friends. Keep it. You would like to play Vargheth into that 12 times, so your entire deck is full of 60 random spells. That's funny, but it's really bad. Only play it if you like to have fun. Dragon's Fury. Dragon Mage doesn't exist, but Big Spell Mage kind of exists with like Frosted Jaina. It's like a Reno, like that version of slow, but you play big spells. That's one of the big spells you play in there, because when you play that, you deal like 5 damage or more for 5 mana. Good for that. Outside of Big Spell Mage, which doesn't really exist, you wouldn't play it. Rolling Fireball. Good removal spell. Turns out if you have 8 damage across multiple minions, that's not bad. That's a good one for that. So if you like to play a Reno Mage, you like to play an OTK, maybe anything that clears the board Fireball is not bad to have. It's not necessary for anything, so if you happen to only have this card and you need 100 dust right now, which I think this applies to nobody, then you can disenchant it, but it's a good removal spell for sure. Then we got Meteor. That's a great removal spell because every time you face a mage and they play something slow, your opponent needs to think about how do they position the minions. If they misposition them and they have the big minion in the middle and the small ones next to it, you get more value from this. Most people don't think about that, so this one is a great card to punish your opponents for mispositioning. Play 1, not 2 for Reno Mage. Astromancer. Yeah, no. Maybe in big spell mage because you have a bunch of spells and your hand is full. But this is so bad. This saw play for a little bit, but it's really bad. I wouldn't play this. I just wouldn't disenchant it. Great Arc and Miss Arts. No, disenchant that too. You don't want to spend 7 mana to deal 9 damage. Glacial Mysteries, one of the worst spells ever. Even in a secret mage deck, but just focused around secrets, you wouldn't play this. This is not good. This is not good. You're always unhappy when you get this card randomly to your hand. It's terrible. Mana Giant. You want to play Quest Mage with an OTK, where you play the quest into a Giant, Arcane Giant as well as Mana Giant. Play it. That is not too hard to cost 0 mana. Takes like 3-4 turns. But outside of Quest Mage with the OTK, so open the Wicked into the Giant, this doesn't see play. For that, it's good. Power of Creation. You want to play Big Spell Mage? That's a big spell for the Big Spell Mage. If you want to play Spell Only Mage, also good. But you then need to play Spell Only Mage in Wild, because it's now a wild card. Not that good. But it's alright. Tortolan. Saw play in Reno Mage when it had the old effect. Now it's kind of different. It used to discover a copy of a spell, now just discovers a spell, meaning the spell you cast with that disappears after because it's used. Problem with that is you can't go infinite. I'm not sure if this card still sees play in Reno Mage. You might want to keep 1 copy of that, but not 2. You can't go infinite anymore. Puzzle Box. You like random, play it. That's it. If you like to play big spells, or random, or Reno, it's good. Keep in mind though, the random can always backfire or win you the game. It's random. Lastly, Pyroblast. Doesn't see play. Used to see play in certain decks because nobody expects 10 damage face, but it just doesn't see play. You don't want to have a card that you can only play on turn 10 in your hand on turn 1. You would just lose a card that you can't play the entire time. That's terrible. And then you also need to deal 10 damage to something, which is the opponent's face. And you can deal 10 damage for a lot less mana than that. You can disenchant Pyroblast. In Paladin, Forbidden Healing only ever saw play in Reno Paladin. You wouldn't play this card anymore. You could technically play something like Prismatic Lens, which is over here. And then you only have that spell, and whatever minion you draw costs 0 mana. But that seems unlikely. No. You can disenchant Forbidden Healing. Doesn't see play anymore. Conviction. This card is fantastic. In any Paladin deck at the moment, this card sees play. Keep in mind, at 5 mana, so on turn 5, this card is 1 mana plus 6 attack. This is Leroy for 1 mana. And you can play 2 of those. And at 10 mana, it's plus 9, but you don't really care about the 10 mana version. You play this on Wind Fury minions, on Divine Shield minions. This card is fantastic. 1 mana deal 6. That's really good. Hidden Wisdom. Even in a secret Paladin deck, you wouldn't play this. You might want to keep 1 copy of that if you enjoy secret Paladin, but nah, the card doesn't see play. Disenchant that. Marshal. You want to play hand buff Paladin? Play this card. Outside of exactly hand buff Paladin, and it doesn't mean mech hand buff, it just means hand buff. This doesn't see play. It's an alright card for mech hand buff because it draws you something, but not necessary. Oh my Arc. It's basically counter spell for 1 mana. Keep it guaranteed. For sure, 100%. One of the best Paladin secrets. Vilefine. If you like to play Murloc Paladin, and I mean just Murlocs, not an OTK or anything like that, just you like Murlocs, then play this card in there. Your hero probably becomes a 1/1 that summons a Murloc. Kinda cool. Also, it's a 1/3 for 1 mana. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. They reference a meme in the flavor text. That's fantastic. So I like Murlocs. Play it. For an OTK, it wouldn't see play. Argent. Surprisingly good card. You can play it in even Paladin, and I guess just in Libram Paladin. You buff your minions. Maybe there's just an 8/8 on the board. This also becomes an 8/8. Only problem is, in Wild, it doesn't really see play, because you can just play better cards instead. And in Standard, I'm not sure if this card also sees play. What I want to say is, it doesn't hurt to keep the card, but it's not necessary for any deck. Cathedral Gargoyle. Even though Dragon Paladin sounds like a really cool deck, it's not good. It's really bad. The only upset of playing this over something like Shielded Minibot or Shotbot is that you have Taunt, and you don't care about Taunt on turn 2. This is so bad. Immortal Prelate. If you like to go infinite with the Undertaker, this card, and something else, you could technically play that, but that's such a bad deck that only works if you play against an NPC. Or if somebody stream snipes you, and for that you would need to be a streamer. So, Ruffle, if you watch this, keep the Prelate. If not, then Disenchant that. The card is terrible. Micro Mummy. Even a Mech hand buff Paladin, this card doesn't see play. It's an alright card in Battlegrounds for turn 1. But in Standard, Wild, no. Disenchant the card. Primal Fin. No, this is not that good. The thing about Libram spells is exactly, or especially Libram of Wisdom, you get the card back to your hand anyways. So you could technically play this and buff that with the Wisdom spell for Librams and then get the card back twice. Well, that seems pretty bad. The problem is you spend 2 mana on a bad 1-drop that has no effect until you buff it. Disenchant that. Sanctuary. Take no damage for a turn, someone is 3/6. No, side quests are bad. Most of them are bad. You wouldn't play this. Maybe an even Paladin, but then no. Now this card doesn't see play in Wild. Ceremonial Maul. This card is not too bad to have, but you don't play it in odd Paladin, where it would make sense in, and you don't play it in Warrior, so I think you can disenchant this card too. It just doesn't see play in their better weapons. That's a better weapon. The Hammer also doesn't see play, by the way. It's a cool card to give something Divine Shade and Taunt. It doesn't see play. It just doesn't, so you can also disenchant that. Small Time Recruits. Even though it draws 3 cards from your deck and you play it in maybe an odd Paladin, this never saw play. You can also disenchant that, even though it draws specific cards. You do have Christology for 1 mana, which is just better, because it draws 2 cards. You don't want to spend 2 more mana to draw 1 more card, nah. Play Christology instead. Sword of Justice. If you play Classic Hearthstone, maybe, but in Wild, no, doesn't see play. Underlight Angling Rod. If you like Murloc Paladin, as mentioned for the Vilefine, keep this card. Besides exactly Murloc Paladin, doesn't see play. Call to Arms. Tax Paladin. Even Paladin. Aggressive Paladin. Something. This is just a good card. It summons 3 things from your deck that all have good stats or have an effect to draw you something. Call to Arms is really good. Glad that they are nerfed this from 5 mana back to 4. Keep this card guaranteed for pretty much any deck. Light Sorrow. There's some really stupid OTK that takes like 10 cards and 25 mana. This card is terrible. Outside of that one dumb OTK, it doesn't see play. Prismatic Lance. You like the idea of OTKs with Murloc, so you can just draw the 8 or 10 cost spell. Anything can happen or tip the scouts with this card. That's really good. Outside of that specific combo deck, doesn't see play, I think. So for a Reno deck, or like a slow deck, a combo deck, this makes sense. And for that, it's pretty good. Veteran War Medic. I can tell you guaranteed for Wild, this card doesn't see play. Standard might be different. You might play a bunch of Libram stuff, but for Wild, this doesn't see play guaranteed. So in Wild, Disenchanted and Standard, keep it. Dragon Speaker. Turns out hand buff is cool. Dragon Paladin is bad. And hand buff Dragon Paladin is also... No, disenchant that. Duel. You want to play big minions and Dual Paladin. There's an entire deck called after this one. That is not too bad. You can summon stuff like Shavala. Maybe a 12/12 Deathwing from your deck. Duel is great for a big Paladin deck. Keep it for that. Besides that, doesn't see play. Glowstone. If you play hand buff Paladin right now, you also play Glowstone. Besides that, doesn't see play. Quartermaster. If you want to play Dude Paladin, so you play Odd Paladin and summon a bunch of 1/1 recruits, you buff them and win the game. Sees play since Sparko got released in Witchwood. Really fantastic card for Odd Paladin. Avenging. You could play it in even, but you don't really want to play it in even. So I think you can disenchant that. Blackguard. There's one infinite loop. For that it's cool, but no, this card doesn't see play. Devout Pupil. Doesn't hurt to keep. You can skip on this card. It's kind of like this one card in Druid for 5 mana. This one right here. Where the card is technically 0 mana and it's not bad to have for free. It's just not necessary for any deck in particular. Then we got Enter the Colosseum for Reno. Reno Paladin. This card is a board clear for Dual Paladin. This card is pretty bad unless you have 1 minion on the board instead of like more than 1. I think it doesn't see play really. It's like a niche card you might want to play in certain decks, but not really. Then Hammer of the Naru. I think this is fine for an even Paladin deck. Reno as well as in Standard. But in Wild and any good deck, this card doesn't see play. Cool weapon though. Level Up. If you want to play even Paladin, play this card. Besides that specific deck, nope, doesn't see play. Mysterious Challenger. The man himself, the man, the myth, the legend that made even, Secret Paladin a thing. Secret Paladin kinda sucks. That's the problem. If you play Secrets in Wild, this card, yeah, belongs into your deck, but it's, the meta is over. This was good in like 2015, 2016, not in 2021. A new Challenger. You want to play set Dual Paladin with a bunch of big dudes and spells? That belongs in there. Besides that, no. Light Forged. Even if you play something like a Pure Paladin or Libram Paladin, this is really bad. It gives you 5 random garbage cards. It's not that bad because it's 7/7/7 and it gives you 5 garbage, but the 5 garbage is so useless, you don't need that. So you could play it in a Pure Paladin deck, it's just not good. Dino Size. So play in 1 OTK. Besides that, card sucks. Don't have that. Disenchant that. Lay on Hands. Hasn't seen play for 5 years. Maybe you want to play it in Classic, I guess, for Classic Hearthstone. Besides Classic, no, you wouldn't play it. Tip the scouts. You like to play Anything Can Happen, would like to play an OTK, where you use Prismatic Lens, draw this spell, and then you summon your entire board full of Murlocs that have charge. For that, keep it. Besides OTK Murlocs, no. Libram of Hope belongs into any Libram deck, same with Wisdom as well as Justice. Those are good cards. Keep this for sure. Now to Priest. I'm already 1 hour into this recording. Let's see how long the video is by now. Forbidden Shaping. Doesn't see play. Summoning random stuff on Priest is pretty bad. Disenchant is guaranteed. Azul's Scheme. If you would like to play Nomi Priest, where you play Auctioneer to draw your entire deck, you need to play 0-cost spells. That's a 0-cost spell you would play. For that specific deck, which is terrible and wild, keep this card. Besides that, doesn't see play. Shadow Bomber. You like the idea of Shadow Priest. Maybe you played that in World of Warcraft. Keep this card. If you would play an aggressive Priest deck, this might make sense in there. It's just that Priest doesn't play an aggressive deck. And if so, you kind of play Death Rattle, stuff that deals damage because of that instead of Battle Cries. Not too bad to keep, but it doesn't really see play. Arcanine. Doesn't see play outside of an OTK where we would like to transform your healing effects to deal damage, which is exactly this card right here. And because it is a spell, you can play Radiant Elemental, and then this card costs 1 mana or 0 mana. And you can also use Palm Reading to reduce the cost instead of this. So if you like the idea of having a heal OTK, which then deals damage, for example, you use Flash Heal, which heals 5 or deals 5 with that, and you double that with Velen, then play this card instead. And only one of them. Condemn has been pretty bad. Just play a board clear. Disenchant this. Confuse. Funny meme card. It's bad. Disenchant it too. Envoy of Lazul. It's a funny card. It's the same version of Curious Glimmerroot. One of the, I think, people just love this card. They just really like playing this. And they also like Angora. So for that, you can play both cards. But playing Steel Priest is really bad. Only if you like the idea of stealing your opponent's cards and getting copies of them. Playing for fun, not to win. This makes sense. Besides that, it's not good. Mana Geode. That is a bad card. You don't want to spend 2 mana to summon a 2/2. That's just using a hero power. Disenchant that. Sathak. If you ever like the idea of Lyra Priest, so you play a bunch of spells and get random stuff to your hand, you can play Sathak. In Standard, this one is a really good card because the pool of randomness is limited. In Wild, you can get a lot of random that is not good. If you like the idea of Lyra Priest, which is also more a meme deck than anything else, or like Divine Spirit Inner Fire Priest, play it. Besides that, no. Shadow Visions. Even though we now have this one card called Forged in the Shadows, I don't know how it's called, the Corset card with the exact same effect, you still play this card and the Corset card. Discovering something in your deck is really good. So if you play Big Priest, Raza Priest, any priest ever that would like to get a certain spell from your deck, play this card and keep it guaranteed. Great, great card. Shadowy Figure. I guess you can play Death Rattle Priest. Maybe when you play Leper Gnome, Sandstorm Trooper, the 2/1 that deals 3 damage, as well as the 4/3 that deals 3 damage, and you play like Shadow Priest with Death Rattles. This could see play in that specific deck, but that sounds really bad. So this only ever saw play in like 1 OTK or so. You can disenchant this, guaranteed. Shadow Fiend. Absolutely terrible. This card is so bad. It's a 3/3 without effect, and then it just dies immediately. Surrender to Madness, also terrible. If you play this card on turn 3, you have no mana crystals, so that's terrible. This is actually a biggin for Druid, right? This is this spell right here. It's just so much worse. You wouldn't play this, ever. Disenchant this. Twilight Acolyte. Even in Dragon Priest, at least the version I saw like a couple months ago from somebody in Legend, this doesn't see play anymore. If you like the idea of dragons and you build your own version of the deck and you have fun with that, you can play this card. It doesn't hurt to play in a dragon deck, but it doesn't see play at the moment. Vivid Nightmare. You would like to play OTKs, or you go back to the... Remember the OTK where you play Test Subject, and then you copied that, and then you flip the stuff around, you had Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, all of that? That saw play in there. You can also copy cards like, let's say, Velen. Deal more damage with Mind Blast or anything like that. It's okay to keep, but it's not necessary. You also have the 3-mana rare spell with the exact same effect that gives something Divine Shield, but summons a 1/1 copy. So this is more like, it doesn't see play at the moment. Cabal Acolyte. I think this used to be a 2/6, now it's a 2/4. This is not too bad to have. In Wild, it doesn't see play, and I think in Standard, it might. Never hurts to include in a deck, but it's not necessary for anything. Fate Weaver. If you play Galakrond Priest, play this dragon. The artwork is fantastic. One of the best ones in the entire game. Beautiful, beautiful dragon. If you play Galakrond, you play dragons, play it for sure. Thing is though, nobody plays Galakrond Priest in Wild, so yeah. Mind Games. Terrible card. Psycho Pump. The problem is, This only makes sense if you play the small priest, which resummons Leper Gnome and so on, because if you play the big priest, then this thing dies itself, the 3-1, and you resurrect the 3-1. And if you resurrect the 3-1, then you have garbage in your resurrection pool, and that's really bad. Glitter Moth. Odd Priest is complete garbage. Disenchant that. Powered Replicate. It's complete garbage. I mean, not complete garbage, because you get a 5-5 copy, but you can also play Faceless Manipulator, and then maybe get a better copy. Or a worse copy. So it's basically faceless, and because of cards like Palm Reading, this could cost 4 mana or 3 mana. So if you ever wanted to play faceless in a priest deck, play this instead. Problem is, this card I think never saw play, so you can disenchant that. Priest of Anshi. I can guarantee you for wild, this won't see play. For standard, maybe, but it's like a 5 mana 8/8 taunt. That's the effect. You just summon stats. Wow, that doesn't do much. For wild disenchanted for standard, might want to keep it. Reckless Experimenter. I haven't seen a single Mechathun Priest in 2 years. If you want to play Mechathun and Priest though, you need that card. Because you play, I think, Ticking Abomination, that deals 5 damage to everything on the board. And you play Coffin Crusher, 6 mana 6/5, that summons Mechathun from your hand. So we had to play this card, and then the other 2 cards for 9 mana in total, and then you win the game if everything else is gone. That sounds really bad, right? Yeah, you can disenchant that too. Shadow Priest. Even in Wild, hasn't seen play for a long time. In the expansion Showdown against Dexter, our fun series, I play this card a lot because it's kind of fun. It doesn't see play in Wild though. Yeah, probably in Classic. If you play Classic Priest, keep it. But if you play Wild, no, disenchant that. Pupil. Same for Paladin. Technically, it costs 0 mana after a couple spells. If you play something like Divine Spirit in a Fire, you play Lara as well as Sethak, the minion we had over here, then I think you also want to play this card because it's 0 mana. Besides that one specific deck which doesn't see play, you can disenchant that. Dragonfire. If you like to play Dragon Priest, which is not that good, but you could play Spiteful Dragon Priest, kind of a fun archetype, you can play this spell. But even then, you wouldn't really play this spell because you only get a 6-drop from Spiteful Summoner, and you want to get an 8-drop or a 10-drop. So only if you really like Dragon Priest, play this card. Besides that, doesn't see play. Embrace the Darkness. This card is completely useless. You should just get control of an enemy minion at the end of your own turn or something like that. Your opponent can just trade into something, and the minion disappears. This is terrible. Light Bump. Doesn't hurt to have as a bot clear, but if you look at the next one, which is Psychic Scream, the best bot clear in my opinion ever made, keep this card. Guaranteed. Such a good bot clear. Death Riddles don't trigger. Effects don't trigger. Your opponent gets a bunch of garbage into their deck. That's fantastic. That is such a good card. And compared to Psychic Scream, this is bad. You would rather play Mass Hysteria or just dispel Hysteria instead of Light Bump. Skeletal Dragon. If you want to play Dragon Priest, play it. But if you don't want to play Dragon Priest, which I think you won't, don't play it. Shmumpy, the Giant. If you play Darklair Warlock, this card sees play. In Priest, it doesn't. Idol of Yasharash. Even if you play Big Priest, you don't play this, because 8 mana for Shadow Essence is just bad. Rather play Shadow Essence for 5 mana instead of Idol of Yasharash for 8 mana. This is not good for Wild. Maybe it sees play in Standard, but for Wild it's useless. Disenchant that. Blood of Cahoon. You play Big Priest, you play this card, because you resurrect this over and over. It summons more versions of itself, maybe of some friends in your deck. This card is way too good. I really hate it. It's really good for Big Priest. Statue. You don't play Statue in Big Priest anymore because you now have Blood of Cahoon, and you also have Scrapyard Colossus, the 10 mana 7/7 Death Rattle Summoner 7/7. But this card used to see play in Big Priest. You can still play like 1 or 2 of them in your deck, probably just 1, because lifesteal is not that bad to have, especially against something like Mage that just points at your face. But this card is not needed anymore since you have this. It's still really good for Big Priest though. Lastly, Plague of Death. It doesn't see play in Reno Priest, it doesn't see play in actually any Priest deck. If you can play Psychic Scream, which kind of has the same effect but shuffled stuff into the enemy stack, which slows them down even more, I think it's better than playing Plague of Death. It doesn't hurt to keep for any Control Priest stack, maybe in Galakrond Control Priest, but that's stuff I just make up right here. Rather play Psychic Scream than Plague of Death, but it's not that bad as a card itself. I mean, it destroys everything and silences everything, right? So this card itself is good, just doesn't see play if you can play Psychic Scream. This is just so broken, play this card instead. For Rogue, Doomerang. Used to see playing Kingsbane Rogue, it doesn't anymore. Kingsbane used to have a card that is called Leeching Poison, which gives the weapon lifesteal forever. Not just for a single turn as it is at the moment, but forever. You used to play Doomerang in there, so you can throw your weapon, get lifesteal, get, you know, a bunch of health back, and then equip the weapon yet again. It doesn't see play anymore. You can disenchant Doomerang guaranteed. Secret Passage. Probably the best draw card ever made, and it already got nerfed from drawing 5 cards to 4. This is 1 mana, draw 4. Even though it replaces your hand, in most cases your hand has a bunch of garbage you don't want to play anyway, so best card ever made, kind of. Yoink! There's an achievement to get all 10 different hero powers from Yoink. That's it. Besides that, you probably wouldn't play this. The thing is, getting another hero power, even though it costs 0, that doesn't do much. Like, just think about it. If you get Hunter, you deal 4 damage for 1 mana. But you can't use your normal hero power. If you get Paladin, you summon a 1 mana 2/2 in total stats. Nah. Yoink doesn't really seem to be useful for anything. You can disenchant it. Bamboozle. If you play something like a Secret Rogue with Hana, this is not too bad to have, honestly. People don't play around that, so you get a random card that costs 3 more mana than the minion you have on the board. For that, actually a cool card. Just Secret Rogue doesn't see play. That's the one problem. AKA Edwin Van Cleef. Haha, very funny. So, Edwin Van Cleef himself in Wild doesn't see play. This card is worse than Edwin. Never saw play. It's terrible. Disenchant that for sure. Evasion. If you want to play something like a big rogue, maybe an OTK deck, any combo deck, or Secret Rogue, this is not too bad to have, especially if you don't really play minions due to all the secrets. You fall behind on board, and your opponent only deals damage to your face once. It's obviously worse than Ice Block because you still take damage the very first time, but after that, you're immune. So for those style of decks, keep the card. Well, Kick Master. I think in Standard this card wasn't too bad. In Wild you wouldn't play this. Any of the stuff you played in Standard when it came to Rogue, you don't play in Wild. You might play Galakron Rogue in Wild, but there's so much randomness, you get a bunch of random garbage to your hand. You can play Odd Rogue, you can play Kingsman Rogue, maybe something like Mill on a Zoth Rogue, maybe a combo. But this style itself, like Will Kick Master, doesn't see play. Beneath the Grounds, when you play Odd Rogue or just Kingsman Rogue and you don't like Reno decks, you don't like Raza Priest, you don't like Reno Mage or Reno Warlock, this card deactivates the deck. But you also have Bad Luck Albatross, which is 3 mana 4/3, that shuffles 2 1-cost cards into their deck that they then have to keep in their hand and play. So I feel like Bad Luck Albatross is a better version of this, but it doesn't hurt to keep this for Odd Rogue, if you really want to play it. Cloak of Shadows. Really cool artwork in Golden, like fantastic, beautiful. Problem is only if you play something like a Major Domo Tess OTK or like Stall Rogue. I don't know. You play some really bad combo decks on Rogue. This makes sense because it's kind of like Ice Block, but you activate it for yourself. Only in some fun OTK decks, some slow decks. The Wrench. Mac Rogue never saw play. This card didn't either. It's bad. Greyheart Sage. Honestly, not a bad card. If you draw a bunch of stuff or want to draw a bunch of stuff for an OTK, for a combo, this is good. For those style of decks, this card is good. You can play the 1/3 Pirate, which has stealth, and then you play this one in the next turn. So that's pretty cool. Maybe in an aggressive stealth deck, but stealth work doesn't really exist in Wild. Maybe in Standard. Swine-Tusked Shank. In Standard, really good card. In Wild, you would rather play Kingsman. For Standard, keep it, because you can hit face over and over. In Wild, you have Kingsman. Espionage. Even in a deck that benefits from playing Espionage, where you have this weapon over here, Spectral Cutlass, you wouldn't play Espionage. Because the cards you shuffle into your deck, they don't have card draw. That means you just get a card that might be a 10 drop for 1 mana, which is pretty cool, but you draw nothing else that turn. Like, your deck slows down a lot after playing this. You can play it for fun, just to enjoy the game, but in a good version of Steel Rogue with Random, where you play this weapon, you wouldn't play Espionage. Only play it if you really just play for memes and want to have fun. Fedora Strider. Really good card, honestly. Just doesn't see play, surprisingly. Turns out for 4 mana, you can just rather win on that turn. Like, you can play so aggressive in Kingsman Rogue, you win on turn 4 or 5. Not even that hard to do. So you wouldn't really play this one. But it's a cool card to have. Necrom Apothecary. When you play Deathwing Dragonlord, the one from, I think, Whispers of the Old Gods, the 10 mana 12/12 Death Rattle, summon all dragons from your hand. You can coin into the Apothecary, draw Deathwing Dragonlord from your deck while your hand is full of dragons. This thing dies, and then you summon the entire board full of dragons on turn 4. That's one cool combo you can do. Only problem is, that's really hard to do, but when it happens, you win the game. So for that one specific cool combo, play it. And I guess in something like a Death Rattle Rogue, where you play Anchor the Buried, and maybe like Scrapyard Colossus. This makes sense. But it's really only in this one deck where you play Deathwing Dragonlord. Poison Blade. Worst weapon ever. Terrible. Potion of Illusion. Maybe if you play Reno Rogue, but that sounds terrible. Maybe in Reno Mage, but for Rogue, probably not. Sabotage. Terrible card. You don't want to spend 4 mana on that. You don't want to have random for 4 mana. Shadow of Death. Unless you play an OTK where you need to summon copies of a specific minion, this doesn't see play. You can safely disenchant this unless you like OTKs and you watch Mark MC Casey, which I do recommend. Next one. Spectral Cutlass. If you play Cutlass Rogue, which means you play a bunch of minions that add something random to your deck and random to your hand so you get more durability, obviously you need this weapon, because you can win because of that. Steel Rogue, or like Random Rogue, is really fun to play. Same with Mage. Just playing random stuff in Hearthstone is really enjoyable. Every single game is different than the game before. You never know what your opponent plays, you never know what you get to your hand. You never know if you win or lose. For that, it's enjoyable. Is it a good deck? No, that's the problem. It's not a good deck. You could play hyper-aggressive with this and just play low-cost cards that all buff your weapon, and then also give you something random to your hand, like Swashbuckler, for example. But that's also not that good. Just play Kingspan if you want to win, this if you want to have fun and enjoy the game. Steel Dancer, not that bad, honestly, because you could play it in Warrior, maybe in Pirate Warrior, or you play it in Kingspan Rogue. Problem is, for 4 mana, you don't care about summoning a random minion, you care about buffing your weapon even more and win the game. Doesn't hurt to keep for those 2 decks, but it doesn't see play at the moment in those decks. Skulker. If you play Galakron Rogue and you play an OTK with Spectral Pillager, which is this minion over here, you want to keep the Umbral Stalker, because every single time you use a coin, you deal 1 more damage this turn. And this one gives you a bunch of coins. You were to play Bran into Skulker, which gives you 6 coins to your hand. You use all 6 coins, use Shadow Step on the minion, and repeat that, get even more coins to your hand, and then you played, I think, 16 cards this turn. And because of Bran and this card, and 16 things you play to deal 32 damage. Those 2 cards go together. Outside of that one specific OTK, it doesn't see play, I'm pretty sure. Even in a Galakron Rogue deck, you wouldn't play this normally unless you play the Pillager OTK. Waggle Pick. When this was in Standard, it was a really solid weapon. You could Shadow Stab, kind of Shadow Stab Leroy, maybe a different minion that has a Battle Cry or combo effect. It doesn't see play in Wild. You can disenchant this. Wanted. Doesn't see play, should cost like 3 mana or 2 mana. No. Unless you kill the minion, you only deal 3 damage for 4 mana. That's terrible. Lotus Assassin. Cool card like 5 years ago. Didn't see play 5 years ago. Still doesn't see play now. Malevolent Strike. If you were to play something like Spectral Cutlass Rogue and you shuffle stuff into your deck with Espionage, this is not that bad. You can also play something like Valdori Strider as well as this card, and then this card costs like 1 mana also. The only problem is, that's also not a good rogue deck in Wild. If you build your own deck into like homebrewed decks, you like to play your own creations, this might be fun for you to test, but it doesn't see play in a good deck, sadly. Necreum Vial. If you play Death Rattle Rogue, so you play Anchor the Buried, the legendary from Doom, that changes the cost of Death Rattle minions to 1 mana in your hand, play this card. You could trigger something like Scorpion Colossus or Sneed Sword Shredder 2 times. If you play Big Rogue, which is kind of the same thing, this card also sees play in there. Besides that specific archetype, which is not that good to be honest, doesn't see play. Shadow Sculptor. Sadly a terrible card. You would think, oh, I play a bunch of coins into this and draw a bunch of stuff. Doesn't happen. This card is terrible. Play anything else. Shadowcaster. If you like Nostalgia and you like Dane, you can play Bran and Shadowcaster and maybe something like Cthulhu and then get copies of the stuff to your hand over and over. But this doesn't see play anymore for like 2 years. Vilespine Slayer. You can still play this in something like Odd Rogue, but besides Odd Rogue, you wouldn't play it. Pretty sure. Cannon Barrage. If you like to play an OTK deck where you shuffle patches into your deck with Torquiggled Scheme, and then you play Pirate, you summon patches a bunch of times, and then you prep into this card twice, which then gets a total of like 42 damage, I think, or 48 damage, then you can disenchant this card outside of that one specific combo. You wouldn't play this in any Pirate-focused deck, in any Kingspan deck. You would just win the game instead. Kidnapper. It's sap for 6 mana. That's bad. Disenchant that. Lucky Do Buccaneer. Also never saw play. Technically a 6 mana 9/9, but you wouldn't play this. Just playing stats is not good, especially after like turn 5 or so. Just playing stats doesn't do much. Pillager, as mentioned, with the Umbral Skulker, just for an OTK, and that's pretty much it, just for the OTK. Unidentified Contract. Destroy minion, get a bonus effect in your hand. I think you can get a copy of that, or gain a coin, something like that. No, it's 6 mana, destroy something. You can also just use sap for 2 mana instead of 6, and remove the minion. It's a lot better. Gurubashi Hype Moon. Cool guy. Problem is in Wild, you discover a random Battlecry minion, right? A random Battlecry minion. There are a bunch of bad Battlecry minions. You can discover Elven Archer. You don't want to discover Elven Archer. If you were to discover something like York, that would be really fun. But it's random, so it doesn't see play. Only play it if you would like to have fun. Lastly, Blade of Cthulhu. When you played that one combo that Dane made with Bran and Shadowcaster, you also played Blade of Cthulhu, because then your Cthulhu becomes gigantic. Only problem is, this card costs 9 mana in Wild. You're dead on turn 4, so you can't play this. And if you were to play something like Cthulhu Rogue, then you might be the only person in the past 2 years doing that. So if you still happen to have this card, it's not good, but you can play it in your own fun creation. Then for Shaman, you don't play Devolving Missiles in Shaman as far as I'm concerned. You might play it in something like Reno Mage. You could play it in Shadowbox Shaman potentially, but then you can also play Devolve. So I think for Shaman, this is kind of like your version of Devolve that is still in Standard. For Standard, it's alright. For Wild, not necessary. Finders Keepers. You discover a card with Overload, and this card overloads itself. So for 2 mana, you get a card. That also costs you mana. That's pretty bad. Also, the Infinite Loop makes no sense because you can't discover this card again. Unstable Evolution. If you like, Evolve Shaman, which is a fun deck, not a really good deck in Wild at least. This card is cool for that. This card is pretty cool for that. But besides that one specific deck, doesn't see play. Big Bad Voodoo. I used to play this card in Even Shaman like 2 years ago. Now you just play Totems and win, so this card also doesn't see play anymore. Maybe if you play a fully focused Evolve Shaman deck and you already play this card, might play that, but it's not necessary for anything. Chain Lightning. No. You wouldn't play this. At least in Wild, you wouldn't play this. In Standard, might be different, where you play Brukan and stuff. For Standard, keep it. For Wild, disenchant that. Cryostasis. Once saw play in Even Shaman, but that's pretty bad. You don't need this card, disenchant that. Even if you like Mozaki, I mean Morabi, the other guy with M, nah, disenchant it. Deathmatch Pavilion. Yeah. You summon a Duelist. In Standard, that might be good. In Wild, that's not good. Even though it's like 6-4 in stats for 2 mana, you wouldn't play this card in Wild ever. In Standard, maybe. Eternal Sentinel. Never saw play. Always bad. Disenchant the card. Omega Mind. Terrible. You wouldn't want to play this. Witch's Brew. Even in something like Shadowbox Shaman or any slower deck, you just play Healing Rain or Reno instead of this. Remove this. Elemental Destruction. If you play... Actually, is there any deck you play this card in? It doesn't hurt to play in combo decks, something like Malygos Shaman, I guess. The only problem is, when you clear the board, the next turn you can't do anything. So you need to play this into get rid of your overloaded mana crystals, which then means you play this one or Lava Shock, which is also bad. So I feel like you can disenchant this card too. But it sees play in some niche OTK decks. Farsight, in any combo deck ever, great card. You draw something, and you have -3 mana on that. Could hit Shadow, could hit a combo card, or just hits the 1-cost card and you lose 2 mana. Always a good card, always. Haunting Visions. Same idea as Farsight, but you get something random to your hand. The good thing is, the next spell, whatever spell it is, costs 3 less. Not the card you discover, but any card in your hand. Any spell. This turn at least. For that, it's okay, but it's not necessary for anything. Also, random and wild is kind of bad, so you might want to skip on that, disenchant that. Magic Fin. Even when you play Murlocs, you don't want to play Magic Fin. Most legendaries, like I would say 60% of the cards, they are bad. And they cost more than 5 mana. You don't want to play that. Plague of Murlocs. When you play Murloc Shaman already, this is kind of like Devolve after you attack. The good thing is your opponent's minions, even if they have a death riddle or whatever, they get rid of that effect. And there's no Murloc with taunt or anything like that. And you might get a Murloc that has charge in your own board. This is just good for Murloc Shaman. This is just a good removal spell. Keep it for that. Spirodactyl. No. Disenchant that. This card is bad. Ancestor's Call. You can play this in Malygos LTK, but because we now have Brukan, which only costs 4 mana, you can also just play Brukan instead of this card, and then do the same thing. So if you like Malygos LTK with Malygos specifically in Shaman, play this maybe in something like a big Shaman, where you summon like Walking Fountain and other 8-drops. Besides those 2 decks, doesn't make sense. Charge Timber, terrible. Only sees play in one specific OTK, and that is a terrible OTK. Disenchant this. Lotus Illusionist. Even in an Evolved deck, this card is terrible. It needs to survive for 1 turn. Even in an Evolved deck, this card is terrible. Needs to survive for 1 turn, and then also needs to hit the enemy's face. And that's kind of hard to do, especially in Wild. Disenchant that. Sylphyn Spiritwalker. Even in Murloc decks, this card doesn't see play unless you get it randomly. Spending 5 mana on this for in the Overload, it's bad. Don't play it. Splitting Axe. If you play Even Shaman, this summons copies of all the totems, which is really good, considering they also keep the buffs. If you play Totemic Might or Totemic Search, and you buff those totems with +2 attack or health, this card, you know, summons copies of the totems with the buff. That's pretty cool. Keep it for that specific deck. Thunderhat. Can't see play in Even Shaman, doesn't see play anymore. It's not a bad card by itself, right? It has good effect, or like good stats with an upside, just doesn't see play. That's the answer. Just doesn't see play right now. Totem Cruncher has always been bad. Don't play this. Boxspine Knuckles. When you play Evolve Shaman, you play Boxspine Knuckles. Because you have something like Desert Hare or maybe Doppelgangster, where you summon 3 copies of the same minion and you play Boxspine. Besides that, doesn't see play. Cumulo Maximus. If you want to play an OTK, where you reduce the cost of elementals in your hand with Fireplume Harbinger over and over, and then you play this card into Grumble and you have something like an infinite cycle, you play this card. It's kind of like Blaze Caller, but you're overloaded. So if you like an OTK with elementals, keep it. but if not, then it's dust. Dragon's Pack. If you play Galakrond Shaman, play Dragon's Pack, but nobody plays Galakrond Shaman, at least in Wild, so you can get rid of that. Hammer of Twilight was good like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Now it's pretty bad. It's dust. Disenchant that. Lily Pad Lurker in Standard, really good. In Wild, nobody plays Elemental Shaman. For Standard, guaranteed keep that. Guarantee to keep that. In Wild, no. Magmorpher, really good for big Shaman. You want to play Walking Fountain, want to play Scorpion Colossus, Colossus of the Moon, anything like that? That's the guy right there for just 5 mana. Play it. Shattered Rumbler. Again, Elemental Shaman doesn't see play in Wild. In Standard, this card is fine. I actually think in Standard you also don't play it, so this might just be dust for both formats. Totem Goliath. When you play Odd Shaman, which is better than expected but also bad, you would play this card, I think. And you can also play Windshear Stormcaller, which is next to it, and then you summon Alakir. Problem is, this one is a really hard thing to pull off. This doesn't happen. And the Goliath is pretty mediocre. But if you play Odd Shaman, you can keep this guy. And if you play for memes and want to have Alakir, then maybe you play that, but this card is dust. Runic Carvings. Great in Standard. For Wild, maybe an even Shaman, not necessary though. Keep it for Standard. Bark Shaper. For that mana cost and that effect, no, this card is not good. Stone Sentinel. Same thing as with the other elementals that are in Wild. You don't play this because nobody plays Elemental Shaman. Reminds me of the rock from Fantastic Four, but yeah, it doesn't see play. Snow Fury Giant. What people used to do is you could play 2 Snow Fury Giants. You could play Elemental Destruction, so you overload 5 twice. This card would then be 1 mana. And then you can play the Spellstone for Shaman. And then you can play Snow Fury Giant into the Spellstone, have an entire board full of Giants. But that's really bad. Disenchant this card instead. Now to Warlock, my expertise, something I know. Altar of Fire. If you like the idea of playing Nero or something like Chef Nomi and you burn your entire deck, if your opponent plays Pokalt, for example, you destroy all the cards they just wanted to draw. Problem is, you burn your own deck too. That's the problem. The card is fairly new. I would still keep it, but it's more like a card for meme decks. Philosophy. You want to copy Ticketus or Doomguard for any OTKs? That's pretty good. If you copy Ticketus, your opponent hates you more than anything else in the world. It's not necessary for anything, but it can copy Ticketus, which is good. Shadow Council. There's a meme. Play it if you like memes. Dark Lair. Dark Lair Warlock is still tier 1 in Wild despite the nerf. Twice for Penflinger and this card. Keep it for that. Maybe in stuff like Discard Warlock, because it's not that hard to take damage face, especially in Wild where you play Covert Librarian. Keep this card most likely if you want to win games. Gnome Ferrate. That's a good card to keep for... Actually, it's not a good card to keep, but if you like to play even Warlock or like Arena Warlock or Disruption Warlock with stuff like this card can be really annoying. Keep in mind though, in most cases, removing a card on your opponent's deck when they have like 25 cards left doesn't do anything. You might hit the 1 in 25 to win the game, but kinda unlikely. Cool card though. Renounced Darkness. Same with this one. It's just a meme. Not a good card, but a big meme. One of my favorite decks of all time is just playing Renounced Darkness and getting something random. Because I once won against the Big Priest, getting exactly the random cards I needed that turn. And that's a good memory, but it's not a good card. Chaos Gazer. This card is terrible. The problem is where it says curse a playable card, not any card. So if your opponent has 3 mana and 5 cards in their hand and they all cost 5 mana or more, this card has no effect. This thing only curses a card that can be discarded or played next turn, which is bad because then they just play it. This rarely has an effect. Chittering Tunneler. You can self-OTK with this. If you have like 1 health left and you play this card, you can die. This card is terrible. Dark Skies. Premium Removal. If you play any slow Warlock deck, any combo deck, Cube Warlock, Arena Warlock, whatever, this card deals 10 damage for 3 mana. And it destroys everything on the board. This card is fantastic. Keep it for sure for any slow deck. Ratcatcher. You can play this in 1 OTK deck where you rush into Wrathguard or the Soulbound Ashtongue, the 1/4 that deals damage dealt to this minion to the enemy's face. Besides that 1 OTK, this card doesn't see play. Revenant Rascal. You can play it to annoy your opponent, but that's it. Don't play it. Treachery. Good for 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1. You have Doomsayer. You give your opponent Doomsayer and their board blows up. That's cool. Number 2. You have Howlfiend, a 3/6 that whenever it takes damage discards a card in the player's hand. So you play Treachery on Howlfiend into Dark Skies. Their hand is gone. Number 3. Fellreaver. It's a 5 mana 8/8 from GVG, which you then give to your opponent with Treachery, and then you just play a bunch of 1-cost cards. This is basically Ticketus, but worse. So for those 3 scenarios, you can play Treachery, but that's actually it. You can probably disenchant this card by now. It was good a couple years ago, but now it's meh. Unlicensed Apothecary, terrible card. Only makes sense if you use Treachery on it, give it to your opponent, and use something like Mad Summoner to summon 6 minions for the opponent and then they die. But that's really bad. Blood Bloom. Since this card is 4 mana instead of 2 mana, it doesn't see play anymore. Was insanely good in Mechathoon Warlock as well as Darkest Hour Warlock. But since that card got nerfed to 4 mana, it doesn't see play. You can disenchant that. Cascading Disaster. For any control Warlock deck, this is not bad to have, honestly. The only downside is you spend 4 mana to destroy a single minion, and you need to corrupt it to actually get value. But it's not that hard to corrupt it in control Warlock. I would keep this, even though Plague of Flames is better. Cataclysm. If you like to play like the old Quest and Warlock, where you have to discard 6 cards, you can play Cataclysm. If you want to play Mechathoon Warlock, keep 1 copy of that. If you play the Discard Warlock, you probably don't want to keep this card, because you destroy your own bot, and you're really bot focused in there. So for Mechathoon, keep 1 copy of that. Diseased Vulture. Doesn't see play, you can safely disenchant that. Dreadsteed, same thing with that. Since they changed this before the file came out, you can't just play this into the file and then it triggers 14 times. This just dies. You summon a 4 mana 1/1. This doesn't do anything. Disenchanted even though it looks so cool in golden. Pit Lord, terrible card. Taking 5 damage just to get like +1/+1 in stats is not worth it. It's really bad. Veiled Worshipper, Galakrond Warlock is terrible. If you were to play that specific deck, keep it, but you should rather disenchant that and forget that Galakrond exists. Bane of Doom, that is a giant meme because you never know what you get. I like to play it and have a golden copy of it on EU. Because maybe you get a Doomguard, maybe you get a Void Lord, or you get a Blood Imp. This is usually bad. Death Web Spider, terrible card. You can disenchant that too. Demon Heart, same thing. Never saw play. It's really bad. Really, really bad. Omega Agent. So play like once or twice in a control deck 2.5 years ago, but you don't play this right now. You can also disenchant that. Void Drinker. If you play Soul Fragment Warlock, or Demon Hunter, I guess, like that style of deck, in Standard, in Wild that doesn't see play, this is not bad. 5 mana, 7/8 taunt? That's actually alright. If you play Soul Fragments, play it, but nobody plays Soul Fragments in Wild, and in Standard, I think you just play a different version of Control Warlock. But it's not that bad to keep. Anima Golem has always been terrible. This card just destroys itself in almost every case. This is not good. Disenchant this. Baron Scavenger. Considering that this card is new and we now also have Altar of Fire, which is also new, those cards go hand in hand. If you were to play that as well as Nero to burn your own deck and then summon a portal that summons stuff over and over, keep it, but destroying your own deck in Warlock means you can also just destroy this card on accident and you never play it. I would still keep it, because it has been like a couple weeks since the expansion got released, but it doesn't seem that good. Dark Bargain. Doesn't see play, it's really bad. If this card had the effect that it destroys 2 cards when this card gets discarded, would be good. But you have to spend 6 mana and lose 2 cards to destroy 2 minions. That's just a lot worse than, let's say, Cascading Disaster over here. That's just a lot worse. You don't want to play that. Darkest Hour. Since this card got nerfed, it doesn't see play anymore. It got nerfed with Blood Bloom, as mentioned earlier, so you can disenchant this card too. Arctomancy. Unless you want to play Doomguard 2 or 3 times with a cube and then copy that and have an OTK, you can disenchant this too. Never saw play, pretty bad. Cabal. Disenchant this. It's just a random demon. Just play anything else. This card is not good. Rift Cleaver. If you play even Warlock, maybe you want to play this, because taking damage is good due to Molten Giant. But that's almost it. That's kind of it. And in the current meta, this doesn't see play. You can disenchant that. Soul Warden. This never saw play in Discard Warlock. Only saw play when you discarded specific cards to go infinite, for example. You could disenchant Baleful Banker and something else. And then you play this card, get this card itself back, and Baleful Banker, shuffle this card into your deck. You would never fatigue with that. But that is such a bad idea. I think Ruffle played that once, and that's it. Flesh Giant, or how I call him, Shmumpy. Shmumpy the Giant. I really like this artwork for I don't know what reason. You play this in Darklight Warlock and it's fantastic. This card costs 0 mana on like turn 3. This is great. Keep it for sure. Void Contract. Giant meme. I play this just for fun every now and then in like a Reno deck or an even Warlock, but it doesn't do anything. It's only fun if your opponent has like 15 cards left and you snap it in half and then they have 7 because they round down instead of rounding up. So 7.5 becomes 7 instead of 8. For that, kind of funny. Void Lord. You play Void Caller into Void Lord, you play Cube Warlock, you play Reno Warlock, any Warlock deck ever that is not aggressive, you play Void Lord. When you have this card, as well as Morganas and 1 Void Caller that died, your entire board is full of stuff when you play Go Down. Fantastic card, keep it for sure. Doom. In an old version of Mechathoon Warlock, this card saw play, so you can draw your entire deck. You played Blood Bloom into Doom, but that's really bad now. Don't play that, disenchant the card. Lastly, Jumbo Imp. I can tell you, this is complete garbage. You will need to have this card in your hand for like 5 turns or so, and play demons, and they need to die. And that's like 3 things that seems unlikely. and all you get is a giant. Just play anything else. Just play Schmumpy instead. The imp is bad. Don't play the imp. Warrior is next. I always mispronounce it, but I don't care. Warrior is the correct pronunciation. Town Crier. When you play something like Deadman's Hand or you play Odd Warrior, this is not bad to have. You can draw Zilliax, you can draw Kargeth and Kargeth Prime. Good card for exactly that. But in any like good deck at the moment, which is just Pirate Warrior, which hits face, you wouldn't play Town Crier. Not a bad card to keep. I would keep it guaranteed. Bladed Gauntlet. You can use one OTK with that. Gain a bunch of armor, play the Gauntlet, and then you play Major Noggin-Fogger and hit the enemy's face. It's very unlikely, really bad deck, but you could make that happen. Funny for that. Bring it on. You used to see play in Deadman's Hand Warrior, doesn't see play anymore, considering that every minion in your opponent's hand costs -2 mana. Bring it on. Really, really beautiful artwork, especially in golden, but doesn't see play anymore. Deadman's Hand. If you would like to never fatigue and you play something like N'Zoth to summon stuff on the board again, maybe you play York for the memes, Cthulhu to have an OTK, or you just want to prolong the game and play Bran into Courtlight into Deadman's Hand over and over, this is the card for you. It's an entire archetype of deck. You can build it in different ways. And I think when you play this correctly, you are almost unbeatable because you can counter everything. So for that, pretty cool card. Explore Angora. Even as a meme, this is bad. This feels like a bad version of a Tavern Brawl when you play this. Because you have to spend 1 mana on the cards that you get from this. And you discover a card which is really bad. Because it could be anything. Ringmaster's Baton. When you play stuff like Menagerie Warrior with Watley, the 5 mana 3/5 legendary with a similar effect, you buff any minion of that type in your hand. Meaning if you have 1 Mech, 1 Dragon, 1 Pirate, each of them gets +1/+1 after 1 attack. So for that, keep it, but it's more like a meme deck. Menagerie/Dragon Warrior is more like a bad version of Pirate Warrior. So if you enjoy playing that style of deck, keep it, but not just play Pirates and win. Sleep with the Fishes. You used to see play in Control/Deadman's Hand Warrior, but you can also just play Blightstorm, which is next, and then just win and destroy the entire board. You can also play Plague of Wrath, the 5 mana spell from Rise of Shadows, I think, which destroys everything, so why play the Fishies? Blightstorm, fantastic card. This destroys a lot. If your opponent has 1 giant minion, which might be like a 15/15, I think it dies. I think this triggers up to 30 times, so this should kill everything. Or just destroys 1 minion and everything else survives, but whatever. Blood Warriors. This card was revealed by Life Coach like 5 years ago, and it has been bad ever since. You only played this card once with Arcane Giant, so you played 1 giant, used the Whirlwind effect, copied the giant that cost 0 mana, and played 2 more copies. But that's like playing Echo of Medivh and Giants, Molten Giants and Mage. That's just something that worked 5-6 years ago. This is bad. Disenchant that. Bloodsworn Mercenary. You would like to play an OTK, whether it's ETC OTK where you rush into stuff, you want to play Worgen, the Wind Fury guy OTK because you now have charge again, which actually gives a minion charge. This is perfect for that. For OTKs, fantastic card. Keep it for that. Bouncing Blade. One of the best animations when you play the card as well as the card itself with the, bouncing blade right there. Problem is, this in most cases deals 1 damage to a 1/1 and then that's it. Don't play it. Rather play Bladestorm. This card doesn't see play. No more. When I talked about Paladin and this card, I mentioned this card doesn't see play, and I still stand true to this. Getting a taunt minion for a spell, that's like not too bad, but it's more like you spend 3 mana to deal 4 damage and get a taunt minion. It's alright, but it's not necessary for anything. I wouldn't play this in any deck. Life Wire Lance. This is not too bad because you get lackeys. Thing is though, it's a random lackey. If you play Galacrunt Warrior, you might want to play this, but I think outside of that, you just play Anka instead as a weapon, because that's so much better. Not too bad to keep, but it's meh. Playmaker. It's an alright card in Standard as far as I know. I think I saw Dexter playing this in a Rush Warrior deck, but it's more like, you summon a copy of a minion. It's okay. It doesn't see play in Wild, so for that you can disenchant it. In Standard, I think it's also bad. Ramming Speed. If you like to punish your opponent for positioning and you play Odd Warrior, you can play this. Besides that, doesn't see play. Also, I still think this artwork does not fit Hearthstone. Why is there some orange background? Doesn't fit. Whatever. Reckless. You play Odd Warrior, you play Deadman's Hand, sees play in there, deals a ton of damage for 3 mana. Great card. Scion. You play Galacrunt, you play this. Simple as that. Smolder Thorn Lancer. Even if you had to play Dragon Warrior, this is really bad. Just play Execute instead. That's so much better than playing this. Because there needs to be a damage minion, so you already need to damage that or trade with a minion or have a Whirlwind effect. And you have to hold a dragon. That's like 2 things and that's too much. Warmaul. In Standard sees play in Wild, never saw play. Keep it for Standard, not for Wild. Brass Knuckles. Terrible card. Don't play this. Please just don't. Magneto Alpha. One of the least played cards of all time. Most people don't know this card exists in the game. For that, it's pretty cool. but this card is so bad. Don't play it. Omega Devastator. Maybe like 2 years ago in the Boomsday project, you played this. You could play something like the 1-mana spell, Omega Assembly, I think, which gives you 3 random max to your hand in Odd Warrior after you play Dr. Boom. And you might get this. But this was good like 2 years ago. You don't play this anymore. Still a good card though, but nobody plays it. Rancor. There's an achievement to destroy, I think, 7 minions with this and gain 14 armor. I think this is not that good. The cool thing is it combines 2 things. So it's kind of like Blade Storm, but it has like an extra effect when it kills something. My only problem is that you can just play better bot clears. I would still keep it because it's new and it's a bot clear and it's a Rancor, but it's not that necessary as it seems. Steel Dancer. You could play it in Kingsman Rogue or like Pirate Warrior, but no, not really. You would rather play a Pirate instead. Cool card, don't need to play it. Wrench. If you play Bomb Warrior, then you shuffle bombs. This one shuffles bombs. Your opponent might draw the bombs back to back to back, and they take 15 damage extra. For that, it's cool. It's just the worst version of Pirate Warrior. Also, the more I say Warrior myself, the less it sounds like an actual word. It's an alright card to keep if you like bombs. Martian Elite. If you play Hand Buff, this card is cool. If you play Quest Hunt Warrior with Fireplume's Heart, also cool card for that. For those 2 decks, keep it for sure. Sudden Genesis. Beautiful artwork. Doesn't see play. Super Collider. If you like Bark and you play Odd, play this card. Outside of that, no. Tan Treasure, if you like the idea of Menagerie Warrior, so you play Watley, you play Ringmaster's Baton, also play the Tan Treasure. Besides that, doesn't see play. Tentacles, terrible, but it's infinite, so that's kind of cool. Deadly Arsenal, terrible card. I think there was one guy like 2 years ago arguing about this card is actually good because I play Taunt Warrior and I have 4 weapons and some dumb argument. No, this card is garbage. Disenchant this. Sea Reaver. Most people also don't know that this card exists. Yeah, disenchant that too. Unless you play Patrons and you top deck this when you need it and you already have Patrons on the board or anything else that benefits from being damaged, then this is just Ogre. No, disenchant this. Soul Thrace could deal damage over and over, but you would rather just play a spell that destroys everything. Overkill is terrible. Beryllium Nullifier. This card is bad, period. Crush, just play Execute. Or Coerce. Actually, just play Coerce. Like, if the enemy minion is damaged, you can destroy it for 3 mana. Or if you combo it, you can destroy everything. Just play Coerce instead of Crush. And that's it for Warrior. Those were all the classes within 2 hours. I've been recording this for 2 hours. Now we go into neutral cards, and then we're done. Recording all the legendaries took 1 hour 50. This is at 2 hours. Damn, this takes longer than expected. Let's go to neutrals. So, starting with Crystallizer. You could play this in Dark Lair Warlock. The only problem is, when you play it in Dark Lair and you take damage face for the benefit of getting a mana crystal, you then have armor. Let's say you take 3 damage and you lose 3 armor, it doesn't count as taking damage. That's a problem. So you might want to play it in Dark Lair, probably not though, because getting armor, doesn't benefit you when you want to deal more damage to your own face. Emerald Hive Queen, never saw play, pretty bad card. You can play this card and then nothing else. That's bad. Gurubashi Offering, this card destroys itself, and you might gain 8 armor, but when you play this card, your opponent deals 2 damage to it, and that's it. This card is terrible. Hungry Crab. If Murlocs ever become, like, dominating, you want to play this card, but that's unlikely, and you don't want to include this card, and it's bad in, like, 19 out of 20 matchups, and you rather just get this card from Zephrys instead. It's not good. Mogu Cultist. This was my very favorite OTK of all time in Warlock, where you played Highkeeper Ra with this thingy, but then they nerfed the Echo mechanic from Glinda, this one legendary, so this card doesn't cost 0 mana in a specific scenario, but 1 mana, and since then you can't really play it anymore, and it's really bad, so. And what I want to say is, if you like the OTK from 2 years ago, play it, but it's terrible. Disenchant that. Weasel Tunneler. If you want to play Albatross and Tunneler and Priest to know your opponent a lot, play it. Besides that, doesn't see play. Baleful Banker. You want to shuffle a certain card into your deck again. Maybe for a Reno deck, you want to shuffle Reno or Zephrys. This is good for that. Captain Spirit. When you play Quest Rogue at the moment, the Caverns Below. You want to play this card to get the pirates from your deck, the Flybooters. For that, keep the card. Besides that one, Quest Rogue deck doesn't see play. Dirty Red. Fantastic card in any Reno deck and any anti-combo deck. Your opponent plays Raza or Spawn of Shadows or Malygos, Aviana, anything like that. The card might be gone. Fantastic card ever since it got printed. Really good card. Doomsayer. Most people, even in control decks, don't play this card anymore. I still like to play it in Mage with Frost Nova into Doomsayer, so Nova Doom. That's pretty cool. Thing is though, you don't play Doomsayer really anymore. It doesn't hurt to keep it, and I still would recommend keeping the card for any control deck, but you just play bot clears instead of Doomsayer at the moment. So, your decision on that. Dwarven Archaeologist. Terrible card. Unless you play this into a Discover card, This is not worth the mana, or including it into your deck. It's just not worth it. Disenchant that. Echoing News. If you play Token Druid into your play something like Embiggen, this might be a 3-4 already, and then you play it and get a copy. Or you just buff it when you play it. This is good for exactly that. Good for Token Druid. Garrison. If you ever played an even deck, could be even Shaman, not really, could be even Hunter, more like that because of Face Stalker, you play Garrison Commander. You can hero power twice, and that's pretty cool. Good for even decks. Grizzled Wizard. You play this guy as well as Sir Finley Murgelton, the legendary from League of Explorers, the 1/3 that discovers a different hero power for you, because your opponent has a good hero power, right? Let's say they play Raza OTK, so they play Shadow Reaper Anduin and have the annoying hero power. You play Grizzled Wizard, get their hero power, and replace their hero power. And next turn, you swap back and they have garbage. For that, pretty cool. Sees play in Reno decks. I think in Reno Mage and Reno Warlock. And you can also do an OTK with that, but that's kind of unlikely. Play to annoy your opponents and get rid of their hero power. Horrendous Growth. Terrible card. In the best case, it's a bunch of stats that then get removed. It's bad. Morg Artificer. You want to play an OTK with Il'gynoth, for example, in Demon Hunter? It's good for that. I think outside of that, it doesn't see play. Recombobulator. Funny card, doesn't see play. It's random. Transmogrifier. Funny card, doesn't see play. It's random. Same thing there. Wyrmrest Purifier. Why would you put neutral cards into your deck to then play this? This might make sense when your opponent plays Bad Luck Albatross and Weasel Tunneler, so you can then transform those cards into random cards. But that's so bad. Don't play it. Augmented Alec. You would like to use Plot Twist into Augmented Alec, or you play Bomb Warrior. Then this card is great. You shuffle a copy of the stuff you just shuffled. For that, it's pretty good. Blood Knight. Maybe you want to play it in Classic Hearthstone. In Wild, this doesn't see play at all. Ever. Blowtorch Saboteur. When Odd Demon Hunter got released, so about a year ago, this saw play in there because against another Odd Demon Hunter, which was a really popular deck in there, your opponent had to spend extra mana for the hero power. And especially against Demon Hunters, they gotta spend 2 more mana for the hero power the next time. At any point, not just next turn, but at any point. In that specific scenario, the card is good, because nobody plays Odd Demon Hunter anymore, and the mirror match doesn't exist. You don't need this card anymore. You can disenchant that. Blubber Baron. Also a card most people don't know exists. Cool card, disenchanted. Death Warden. Kind of a cool counter card, but not really. How do you know your opponent even plays Death Battles? And if they play it, you have to draw the card and destroy their minions, so it doesn't really make sense. Drakari Enchanter. Makes sense for 2 or 3 specific things. Number 1, you play Emperor Taurison. You play the guy that reduces the cost of cards in your hand by 1 mana. Because of Drakari, it has the effect twice, so any card in your hand is -2 mana. For that, it's good in certain combo decks. Number 2, when you play Hadronox in Druid, the giant spider that summons taunt minions, you play Master O card, summon a 1, 2, and 3 cost minion, you summon Hadronox, Drakari Enchanter, and there's 1 card for 9 mana, which I will jump to real quick. You have Dragon Hatcher and Drakari Enchanter at the exact same time, so you get 2 dragons from your deck. That's scenario number 2. Number 3 is you play Vargeth, which then, triggers a spell at the end of your turn, with Drakari Enchanter and either a small priest deck, which has a bunch of death battles, or you play something like a bad mage deck, which shuffles a bunch of stuff into your deck with Deck of Wonders. Those are the 3 scenarios where you would play this card in, but that's actually it. So unless you play a combo with Emperor, you probably don't play this card. Drakari Trickster, funny card, not necessary for anything. Dread Raven, you can play it in an OTK in Hunter, but that's really bad. The cool thing is you can shuffle copies of that into your deck, summon the copies, and then give them charge somehow. And that's kind of cool. But it doesn't see play in anything. Educated Alec. Sometimes if you have a quest to play like certain spells over and over, you might want to play this, cast the spells, get the spells back to your deck, but nah, that's pretty bad. Enchanted Cauldron. Outside of one specific combo that Mark did, where he, I think, tried to get an Orkanai effect, so like Essence of Shadow into Tree of Life. Outside of that one combo, this doesn't see play. So this card is pretty bad. Verloc Soulfiend. This card kills itself. That's also really bad. Don't play this card. Gluttonous Ooze. In Reno decks, it's a better version of Ooze. You just destroy the enemy's weapon. And you can, if you really want to, also play Cobalt Sticky Finger for 5 mana. But this is still a good card against any aggressive deck. Especially Kingspan, because you get armor. History Buff. Doesn't see play. It's not really a good card. Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin and Magic Carpet kind of go together. When you play a deck centered around lackeys, so you could play Galakrond Rogue, for example, you can play a bad version of Token Druid, and you can play a bad version of Zoo Warlock. Those 2 cards go together, but that's like a really bad deck. It's really cool though. This gives me nostalgia. This is fun to play. It's just really bad. The cool thing is, if you play 1-drop into like Hobgoblin and this, it gets the effects from both cards but it's just so bad. This was good like 2-3 years ago, and even then it was a meme. Mass Contender. Not that bad in Secret Mage, even though people don't play it. Good for Hunter. People also don't play it there. Just as a disclaimer, people don't play this card, but it doesn't hurt to include it into your decks. It gives you a secret. That's good. Master of Ceremonies. She is the battle cry ready to rumble, which she screams. It's really loud, cool artwork, doesn't see play, it's just stats. Mischief Maker. If you ever watched Gross Cards, he had a deck called Confusion Shaman, where you kind of swap cards with the opponent's deck over and over, and then you play Shadowwalk, and then it's more like everything is random. That's one cool deck. Besides that specific deck, no, the card is a meme. Disenchant that. War Leader. You like to play Murlocs in Paladin, maybe in Shaman, play the War Leader. Great card. Buffs your Murlocs, deals damage. Amalgam. Doesn't see play, you can disenchant that. Rummaging Kobold. Only sees play if you play Jade Shaman. So you play Jade Claws, which is a 2-mana weapon that summons a Jade Golem. That is a Battlecry effect. So you play the Battlecry quest in Shaman, where your Battlecry triggers twice if you hero power. You then hero power, summon 2 Jade thingies, destroy a weapon eventually, and get 2 weapons back to your hand and summon even more Jade Golems. Besides that one specific deck, Jade Shaman, this doesn't see play. Shade of Nix Ramus. Good in like OTK Druid 6 years ago, but it's pretty bad ever since. Don't keep that. Untamed Beastmaster. Kinda cool in Hunter. Won't maybe make sense in Standard, but in Wild, nobody plays Beasts in Hunter. Not really, so you can disenchant this even though it's a cool card. Void Ripper. He used to see play to counter Spreading Plague in Druid, but that's it. Card doesn't see play anymore. Kind of fun though because you swap stuff around. Cool effect. Voodoo Doll. So play in Big Spell Mage, because when you played Frostless Jaina, which has the hero power if you destroy something, summon a 3/6 elemental. Voodoo Doll, you know, you can target something, destroy your own doll, destroy it, and summon a 3/6. Besides Big Spell Mage, and like one specific Mechathune thing in Shaman, which I think Dog played in like top 5 Legend, also 2 years ago, this doesn't see play. And that's like everything that came to mind to this card. You can disenchant that, is what I would like to say. Volpara. Funny card, gives you 3 discover options or mystery choice. If you like random, that's the card for you. Funny card. Witch's Cauldron. Terrible, but it's random and it's for Shaman. Most Shaman cards suck. You could play it on Odd Paladin, but that's bad. Don't play it. Body Wrapper. This card is also really bad. The thing is, you have raised that for Reno decks, whether it's Warlock or Priest. Raised that gives you 2 cards to your hand immediately, and you can play it for 0 mana. So you can play Zephrys dies and you get it back. Body Wrapper is so slow. Disenchant that. Bright-Eyed Scout. So play when you had Naga Sea Witch, I think, for 5 mana, so 2.5 years ago. You can disenchant that now. It's bad. Corpse Taker. When you play even Paladin, I think that's actually it. You might want to play this, or you could play it in something like Shaman, because you have like Walking Fountain, and then this one has all the effects from it. Nah, you wouldn't play this anymore. Has been 4 years, you wouldn't play it. Watch Post. This one is by far the worst Watch Post. You can disenchant this, I'm pretty sure. Buffing everything after your opponent casts a spell. This doesn't really do much. Crowd favorite. Even when it was in Battlegrounds, this card wasn't good. Cyclopean Horror. Good 5 years ago, it's bad. Even though it does have a giant eyeball and looks interesting, you can disenchant that. That gives me nightmares. Death Ex Punisher. If you played Zilliax 2 years ago, you play Death Ex Punisher into Zilliax. Then you have to fight for Zilliax. That's it. Disenchant this card. Most people don't know that this card exists because it's that bad. Enhancer. Honestly, if you play any Zoo deck or any token deck, maybe even Darkglare Warlock, this card is cool. This card is great. Your giant might have Wind Fury or Divine Shield. That's fantastic. Enhancer is always good. It's not necessary for any Darkglare or token deck, but you could play it. Escape Mana Saver. It's good for Even Hunter. It sees play in Reno Mage, I think still, at least in older versions. This card is not bad. If you have Escape Mana Saver for any slow deck, this card is good. Gives you mana. Good card. Faceless Shambler. If you play exactly even Warlock, where you have Molten Giant, Flesh Giant, and Mountain Giant, you summon a copy of the Giant with Faceless. You get an 8/8 with Taunt. That's really good. Besides that, one deck, even Warlock, doesn't see play. Gentle Megasaur. When you play Murlocs in Paladin or in Shaman, you might want to play this. It's not even necessary though, but you could play it in there. Henge Clan Hack. Really bad. If you play something like Menagerie Warrior though, you get 2 amalgams, which have all types, right? Which means if you play Menagerie, where it benefits you from having all types of minions, this might help you. But you can also disenchant that. Ice Cream Peddler. If you like to play Hostage Shaman, that's how it's called, where you play a bunch of freeze effects, Shadowwalk, and this card, you freeze everything on the board, remove stuff for your opponent, shuffle garbage into the deck, with like Bad Luck Albatross for example, and then you do it over and over and gain a ton of armor. This card makes sense. Besides that one deck, doesn't see play. Meat Wagon. You used to play this card and get something like Summoning Stone from your deck. The 0/6 that summons a random minion after you cast a spell. You could also play this to get something like a lower shrine, maybe like an egg from your deck, but it doesn't see play. Could see play an Egg Hunter, but that's also unlikely. So you can probably disenchant this. Omega Defender. How about now? This only sees play if you want to play Charge Shudderwock, where you play Armored Warhorse, which has the effect that it reveals a minion in each player's deck, and if your minion costs more, your minion gains charge. You play that in Shudderwock to gain charge on Shudderwock, summon copies, and get this effect over here. So your Shudderwock has like +10 attack multiple times. That already sounds bad, but that's one OTK you can do where this card may make sense in. That's actually the only deck that ever played this card. Rattling Rascal. Honestly, cool card. Reminds me of a zombie or like a skeleton from Clash of Clans or Clash Royale. It's pretty bad though, don't play it. Replicatron. If you play Mag Hand buff Paladin or Mag Hunter, you might want to play this. Makes more sense in Mag Hand buff Paladin because this one could be a 7/7 and then it summons copies. For that, keep it. Sandbinder. You want to draw specific elementals, maybe Zephrys from your deck. Makes sense in Shudderwock Shaman, Reno Shaman. Actually, this card only sees play in Shaman. For that, you might want to keep it. Not necessary though, because you have other draw cards. Shimmering Courser. This card can be disenchanted immediately. You summon like a 2-drop for 4 mana, and then it dies. It's not good. But the effect is cool, and it's a unicorn. Scoundrel. This card is actually alright. Problem is your opponent draws a card. If you like to play some fun pirates, this one is a fun pirate. It's not the best pirate. Spirit Healer. You would rather play the 4 mana 3/6, the Light Horse, for Priest instead of this. Even though it's a cool artwork, don't play it. Twilight Guardian. You like to play Dragon Priest or dragons in general? This is not that bad. The only problem is the effect this card has is it gains Taunt. If you summon a 4 mana 3/6, that's just normal stats. And the upside of this card is it has Taunt, so I think you wouldn't play this card anymore. But it's used to see play a lot in Dragon decks. Twilight Summoner. This is basically the newest card we get for free in Golden, which summons a 5/8 in Taunt, but smaller. This card never saw play, so you can probably disenchant this. If you were to play a 1/1, you play the 5-cost card. Weaponized Pinata. It gets you something random to your end. If you like random and colors, this has a pretty artwork. Keep it for that. Arcane Tyrant. When I talked about this one card in Druid called Anubis Defender, if you play something like Overflow or Ultimate Infestation, you might want to include this card as well as Arcane Anomaly, Tyrant, whatever. Because even if you draw into the card after you cast the spell, the card is 0 mana. That's kind of it. Maybe in Big Spell Mage, your call on that, I wouldn't really play it. Azerite. Terrible card. You wouldn't play this. Baron's Blacksmith. No. That's simple. No. Bittertide Hydra. Saw play in a couple decks over the years, but now it's more like you take a bunch of damage and you get stats. And if you can win by turn 4, you don't want to summon this on 5. You rather play Leroy and close out the game, I think. Doesn't see play anymore, but was a really good card for a long time. Boom Pistol. If you want to lock out your opponent playing Shudderwock Shaman, play the Bully. Saw play in Standard for a long time against all the lackeys. This is not too bad. Just doesn't see play at the moment. Burgly Bully. Saw play a bunch of years ago in some like Reno Mage or certain decks. But no, you can disenchant that too. Cube. If you would like to play Death Rattle, Hunter, Rogue, Cube, Warlock, play the Cube. Cube is great. One of the best cards, I think, for 5 mana. It summons copies of something, and if it has a Death Rattle, the minion you target, you trigger it. That's really good. Play that card for sure. Keep it. Chromatic Arc is terrible. Your opponent just ignores this card, and then you have a minion you can't destroy, and that's bad. Disenchant this. Christ Worshipper, same thing. Even if you were to play the old Cthulhu, which when you play the old Cthulhu cards, it doesn't buff the new Cthulhu, just so you know. You wouldn't play this. This is bad. Dark Speaker. Personally, one of my favorite cards. I really like the artwork and the effect. Problem is, this one is a 4 mana card that costs 5 mana and has a bad effect. But it's a really cool card. Desert Obelisk. One of the worst cards ever. You hate it when you get it, from Jandis, for example. If you would like to play this in an OTK, which is terrible, play it, but rather disenchant that. Genie of Zephyrs, not Zephyrus. Zephyrus. The difference between Zephyrus and Zephyrus is the positioning of the Y and the R, the last 3 letters in there. This saw play at some point where you gave him an in charge or something. I think this guy's Toast played this for a meme priest deck. You can disenchant this now. Operative. Complete garbage. Play a removal spell instead of this. This is so situational, this never has an effect. It's like Hammett. Hammett Nesting Worry from GVG. It's terrible. Disenchant that. Fel Reaver. Even in Mac decks you don't play it. You would only play this if you were to play Treachery on this card in Warlock, give it to your opponent, and then you play cards to remove their cards from their own deck. But you can also just play Ticketus now, which is so much better. So this one is pretty dust. Holomancer. There's one really bad OTK with this card, which costs like 28 mana. Disenchant this. This is really bad. Junkbot. In Battlegrounds, this card sucks. In here, this card sucks. Disenchant this. Stinky Finger. If you would like to counter Kingsbane Rogue, you don't play Gluttonous Ooze to destroy their weapon, but you take their weapon. If you don't like Kingsbane, keep this. Keep like one copy of that in like Reno decks or like Odd Warrior, for example. The Specimen, yeah, no. You can disenchant this. Mortuary Machine, you can also disenchant that. Card never saw play for anything. Moshok Announcer. Enemies attacking this have a 50% chance to attack someone else. Wow, this might just dodge every attack. It's like Neo in Matrix. You can disenchant that too. Mark Hunter. You don't like Big Priest, summon stuff for them. Card doesn't see play. Disenchant that. Recruiter. Honestly, there was somebody playing Raza Priest with Recruiter. I think it was Dane. So you play Raza Priest, have the good hero power, and you play Recruiter into hero power, and you get the Squires, which cost 1 mana, I think. And then you can just play the Squire, hero power again, and get a 1 mana card to your hand. For that one combo, it's kind of cool. But that's it. You can probably disenchant that. Sephorium Bomber. You like to play Shudderwalk and Bombs or just Bomb Warrior? Play this card. Besides that, no. Skyfin. I tried to play Dragon Murloc Paladin. It's a cool idea for an archetype, something unique, something that feels different than most other decks. It's just a bad card though, because it's random. But a good high roll. Snapjaw Shellfighter. If you ever watched WoW Hops, he really likes this card. The card is pretty bad though. You can disenchant that. Tentacled Menace. If you were to play something like a big deck, which then means you might summon this on accident, but if you were to play a big deck, you draw your high cost card, your big minion, and your opponent draws something like a 2 cost card, and you swap cost. That's kind of cool. Also doesn't see play. Tomb Lurker. This card is really bad. Disenchant this for sure. Validated Doomsayer. This card is also dust. This one is 5 mana 0/7. It just dies. Waste Warden. This is honestly not that bad, but I haven't seen this in any deck. You would rather play a bot clear or something like the Lurker below in Shaman, the legendary, the 6/5, instead of this. This is It's alright, you can keep it, but it's not necessary. Ancient Harbinger. Kinda cool idea that you draw a 10 cost card from your deck. Problem is, it's at the start of your turn, not the end. Meaning this has to survive for a turn, and you have to still have the 10 cost card in your deck, and you have to not die. It's unlikely. Disenchant that. Blatant Decoy. In Dual Paladin, this card is actually really good. If you like Dual Paladin, play this card. Defiance Cleaner is pretty bad. Why would you only silence one specific type of minion? Why not just any minion? Card sucks. Fight Promoter, like 5 years ago, we got this card for free. Hasn't seen play since. If you were to draw, like if you play a hand buff deck and you buff this to 6 health, you would draw 2 cards by just playing the card by itself, but that's bad for 6 mana. Don't do it. Furnace Fire Colossus, there's 1 OTK with that in Warrior. You can play a bunch of weapons, then give this guy charge and then hit face. That's it. Card is really bad. Grand Crusader. You used to play this in Mage to get Mysterious Challenger and then play Challenger and get a bunch of secrets. That's it. There was a meme from 5 years ago. Don't play it. Quarter Rider. Even in even decks, this card is not good. Disenchant this. Leatherclad Hawk Leader. No. Maybe you want to give your Shudderwalk charge with the OTK I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Maybe not. Probably not. Mossy Horror. Against Spreading Plague and Druid. This is really good. Problem is, you have to have 6 mana. Saw play an even Warlock at some point, because you could win against all the Druids with Spreading Plague. But no, not anymore. Cool card though. Now, Rubidian Reveler. Saw play in Darkest Hour Warlock where you played Blood Bloom, Darkest Hour, summon a bunch of stuff, this one included, and your opponent couldn't cast any spells. That was cool. That was also over a year ago, so you can get rid of this card now. Sky Golem. This card doesn't have taunt. It's a 6/4. It's random. Disenchant that, even though it's cool. Portal Overfiend. Disenchant that too. Not good. Scaled Nightmare. Sadly a bad dragon. Sideshow Spell Eater. You can't even use this against adventure bosses. But it is a cool effect. Skulking Geist. If you play Arena deck, it's never bad to include this because you might face a Jade Druid, which you will very likely not. But you destroy a bunch of spells for hand buff Paladin, for Rogue, as well as for Mage at the moment. So this is kind of cool for that. I would keep Skulking Geist. Not because of Jade Idol, so Druids don't go infinite, but because of cards like Conviction in Paladin, which deal like 6 damage for 1 mana. Spiteful. You like Spiteful Hunter, Druid, Mage, whatever. Spiteful is a cool card. This card, as well as the Primordial guy for 8 mana, create an archetype. And that's cool. You play a couple high-cost spells, you summon an 8 or 10 drop, almost guaranteed. Kinda cool for that. Unseen Saboteur. In most cases, getting a spell from your opponent's hand and casting it for them is not good. It always backfires. But it could be a funny meme. I would play it just for fun in Shudderwalk Shaman, just to have fun, but it's not a good card. Dirty Red is good, because it gets rid of minions. This doesn't do much. Burglebot. You could give your opponent this card and play Hysteria on it, and the opponent draws a ton of minions. Like the entire deck, and then they fatigue. But that's like the only way this card makes sense. Like, this card costs 6 mana. It's so bad. It's so bad. Blaze Caller. As mentioned when I talked about the Cloud and Shaman, Maximus Cumulo, whatever it's called, Blaze Caller makes sense if you're playing OTK deck to hit face over and over with elementals. You might want to play it in Shaman or Mage, but that was like 4 years ago in Angora. Sadly, that time is over. Creeper. You can still play it in Odd Paladin. Besides that, not really. And even then, it's not really needed. This most of the time costs 0 mana, so that's kind of cool. Quad Roaster. Never saw play. Pretty bad card. Disenchant this. Line Cracker. You would like to get 2500 armor or more in Druid, and then you just end your turn over and over, and your opponent dies to fatigue. Play Line Cracker. Besides that, one deck doesn't see play. Starliner. Used to see play in Druid for an OTK, back when Aviana cost 9 mana. At the moment, this card doesn't see play, and it's more like a meme OTK you can play for nostalgia. It's not good. Kinda cool card. Worgen Abomination. It's terrible. Disenchant that. Batter Hat. Also a bad card. You could technically play it in something like Dual Paladin or like Big Shaman, but no, you just don't play it. Charge Double Saw. You like the idea of OTK in Hunter, where you play Charge Double Saw with Katrina as well as King Crush. Play Charge Double Saw. Not that good though. The cool thing is the card itself has charge. Only if you play it from your hand directly, it can't attack the enemy. But you can play something like Beastmaster Leo Rocks, and you can copy this a couple times and summon it from your hand. For that, pretty cool. Great Archivist. When you play a Spiteful deck like Spiteful Hunter, for example, a Spiteful Druid, this card is also cool because it then actually casts the spell. So you could play this card into Survival of the Fittest, or Ultimate Infestation, or maybe in Spiteful Dragon Priest into Mind Control. Besides those decks with Spiteful, doesn't see play. Naga Sea Witch, since it got changed to 8 mana from 5 mana, this card is dust. Disenchant that. Primordial Drake was good about 4 years ago when it came out. Doesn't see play anymore. You can disenchant that too. Primordial Protector is the new version of Spiteful Summoner. So for that, if you like Spiteful and you also like the Primordial, you play those two cards in the same deck. But that's kind of it. You play it when you play Spiteful in no other deck, I think, though. Splitting Fester Root. One of the worst epics ever made. This card is complete garbage. It's really bad. Turtolum Primalist. It's random with random. So yeah, that's not good. Disenchant this, even though it's a happy turtle. Whirlwind Tempest. You could play this card into any Wind Fury minion, and you have Mega Wind Fury. Wow, that's really just good for bad OTKs. I played this in Shaman with Leroy Jenkins, used Rockbiter to make him 9 attack, and then gave him Wind Fury for 2 mana. That is a combo with Ancestor's Call that cost 11 mana, so it's not that hard to pull off. Only 4 cards, and you deal 36 damage. If your opponent has a taunt minion, it doesn't work. That's the only thing I can think about when it comes to making this card work. Blood of the Ancient One. The Ancient One, Zancient One, Bancient One. Such a fun card. If you like to have fun in the game, and you like some, nostalgic meme in Hearthstone, play the Ancient One. That's actually it though. You can play it in Priest and play the Ancient One Priest. That's kind of cool. I called it once one-hit Priest or one-punch Priest, because you play 2 of those, get the Ancient One, a 30-30 minion, and hit face, win the game. Carnival Clown. This is really good in Druid. You go to 10 mana, play something like Coon into this, or Survival of the Fittest, Ultimate Infestation. It's really easy to corrupt this card in Druid, and then your entire board is full of stuff. For that, keep the clown. Good guy. Dragon Hatcher, as mentioned earlier for Drakari Enchanter in Hedronox Druid. So you can summon a bunch of dragons twice. That's it. Card doesn't see play outside of that. Bakebed Archmage saw play in Big Shaman, but now you have Scrapyard Colossus and Colossus of the Moon and all of that. So this doesn't really see play anymore. Doesn't hurt to keep though if you really want to play it in Big Shaman. Darkmoon Rabbit, it's terrible. That's it. Frost Giant, maybe an even Mage, because this card could cost 0 mana. Only problem is people don't play it in even decks ever. That's the problem. So you can disenchant that. Sea Giant, also not in the game anymore, really, so people don't play it. Giants are never bad to keep, but this card doesn't see play. That's just how it is. Arcane Giant. When you play Mana Giant in Quest Mage, open the way gates to then win the game after you play Arcane Giant and Mana Giant, and you have an extra turn. This card makes sense in there. Outside of that, or maybe like York Druid, where you cast a bunch of spells anyways, the card doesn't see play. So for those 2 decks, keep it. Mountain Giant, if you play something like even Warlock, that's a really good card. If you play Big Spell Mage and Conjurer's Calling, that's a really good card for that. Molten Giant, if you would like to play even Warlock, maybe Dark Lair Warlock, because you do take a bunch of damage, or you play Holy Wrath Paladin, this card is in there. And besides those decks, I think the card doesn't see play. You could play something like Ice Block and then this into Echo of Medivh, and then you summon more Giants, but nah, that seems pretty bad. So you play this in those couple decks, and I think with that, I would say 2 hours, 36 minutes, 37 seconds is how long it took me to record all of this. So I would say at this point, hope this helped with every single epic in the game that you can disenchant. Keep in mind the cards that you can't disenchant, the uncraftable cards that are either part of the core set, or you just get because, I don't know, an event, let's say transfer student, for example. Obviously, I didn't mention that. You can't disenchant those. Hope you get a bunch of dust from the cards that never see play, that just lie around in your collection that you never use. My name is Person, and this was a very long guide. Take care.